Camera on?
Is the camera?
I don't see the light.
There you go.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right,
Yes, I can.
excellent. Good afternoon, honorable members of council, Chief of Staff Washington, department heads, and members of the public. This evening, there are 3 budget hearings scheduled with the Land Use and Planning Department, followed by Real Estate and Housing at 6 p.m., and then Department of License and Inspection at 7 p.m. I'd like to first start by recognizing members of the Finance Committee here in attendance by doing a roll call. Council member, Vice Chair Harley, 4th District.
Present.
Council member Oliver, 3rd District.
Present.
Council member Field, 8th District.
Present.
At large, Council member Spadola,
Present.
and at large, Council member Walsh is excused. And Council President Congo.
Here.
All right. I'll also like to recognize other council members in attendance this afternoon. Council member Gray, 1st District.
Present.
Council member Darby, 2nd District. Council member Fields, 5th District.
Present.
Council member McCoy, 6th District. Council member Cabrera at large.
Present.
Council member Mills at large.
Present.
Mayor Purzycki presented a proposed budget on March 17th, which had a 7.5 proposed 7.5 property tax rate increase, 5% water rate increase, use of $12 million in Arpa funds for revenue replacement. And this calculation ends up with a $10.1 million budget surplus, and $0 from the tax stabilization fund is needed to balance the budget. The proposed general fund budget total is $176.9 million, which is up $4.2 million. And the proposed water sewer fund balance is $82.1 million, which is an increase of $2.5 million. This is an odd year budget, so the city will have a $0 capital budget program. The mayor shared his vision for the planned use of budgetary funds for the upcoming fiscal year. Now it is council's fiduciary responsibility to review the budget, have budget hearings between the various departments, and figure out the plan how to best use the city's funds. By charter, council must adopt a balanced budget, and it'll be the duty of council to do so at least 30 days before the end of the fiscal year. Council has shared its priorities with the mayors already. These include public safety initiatives involving gun violence prevention programs and citizen oversight boards, neighborhood stabilization, enhancing education in the city, strengthening economic development, and improving our parks, just to name a few. The COVID-19 pandemic has impacted the world immensely. Nonetheless, the city has received its first installment, thankfully, of the Arpa funds. And the second installment is due this May or June. And the total pot the city is due to receive is $55 million in American Rescue Fund plans. Since the inception of American Rescue Funds, the City Council and administration have been collaborating on how to best use these funds to enhance the quality of life for our residents. Just to let you know, for this budget term, the proposal is $12 million in ARPA funds used to replace revenue that the city has lost. Before I turn it over to Mr. Hayford from OMB, I would like to inform everyone that public comments will be at the end of each department's budget hearings, and we look forward to participation from the public. The limitation will be 3 minutes per public comment, and any follow-up will be handled in accordance by Ms. Bass Knight from City Council. I ask that my colleagues have any questions. As always, use the raise hand feature on Zoom. Now, at this time, I will turn it over to Mr. Hayford, the OMB Fiscal and Operational Analyst, for a financial overview, and then I'll be followed by comments from Mr. David Sofrin, who then will be followed by Commissioner Starkey. And this budget hearing is slated to last for 90 minutes. The floor is yours, Mr. Hayford.
Thank you. Can we have a slide? Good afternoon, Chairman Johnson, President Kungu, and honorable members of City Council. I would like to present the Department of Land Use and Planning FY2023 proposed budget request on behalf of the Office of Management and Budget. The Department of Planning and Development has become the Department of Land Use and Planning. It was reorganized by transferring in those processes, employees, and budget accounts from the L&I department related to permitting, plan reviews, and land development. Among other things, the proper integration of processes and employees will ensure a more efficient review and response to land development requests. The Land Use and Planning Department is requesting a total general fund budget of $3.72 million in FY2023. This total request represents an increase of $2.27 million or 157%. Next slide. The major funding changes for FY2023 are the result of transferring 12 accounts of $1.92 million from the Department of L&I. 14 positions were transferred in at the cost of $1.4 million. A total of $526,000 of MSNE accounts were transferred in. Some of the larger accounts that were transferred in include demolition, $350,000, consultants, $120,000, and temporary agencies, $15,000. Excluding the transfer from L&I, $40,000 in existing consultant funding was eliminated as the duties of the MPC support consultant included in the FY2022 budget are currently being handled by the Senior Planner 2. This concludes my presentation, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
All right, Vice Chair Harley, you have a question for OMB?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The last item that you just mentioned regarding the elimination of the position for the MPC, coordinator or whatever the title is. So what is the plan in terms of what we currently have, and is that role going to be expanded? And the reason why I asked that question is because I know previously the City Council had asked for that position to be filled to help support in the community. And I noticed, and a number of council members noticed that position was not filled, but someone that was currently working and planning pretty much just started running the meetings, the MPC meetings, the monthly meetings that the person that had that position previously used to do, in addition to going in the community. So again, my ask is, will that role be expanded by the person that is currently in that position if it's not going to be filled? Because there is a need for someone to go in the community to talk about projects regarding and relating to neighborhood planning council. That's still an issue. Some of the presidents of the MPCs right now they are challenged with sharing with the community what kind of projects that the community can come up with to spend the money.
And Vice Chair Harley, and I don't know if you have an answer, Mr. Hayford. I think that might be more appropriate for Chief of Staff Washington. So I don't know if we want to put a pin in that. I mean, that's a great question. I just don't know if Mr. Hayford can answer. Chief of Staff Washington.
Sure, I can address that. So just to put some context around it, Councilmember Harley, in the past, there was always a staff person out of the Department of Planning who was dedicated to working with the NPCs. What happened in prior years is that a person retired, two people actually retired, and there was a little disconnect there. So last year we had a planner that actually attended all of the meetings. He's been doing very well, and I understand that he's been received very well. And we will continue to have that person to work with the NPCs going forward. That's not going to change. The issues you have with bringing in a consultant is that the person that works with the NPCs out of planning, they actually have access to those various accounts, and they have the history on the capital budget processing. And so it's a really easy process once you get to understand it, that those funds can only be used towards capital efforts and planning efforts. And so I have not heard that the planner has had any problem with that. There is a lack of spend down on those funds. But it's not due to any fault of the planner that's assigned to the projects. So we are just going to continue to actually have a planner assigned to the NPCs.
Well, my follow-up, thank you, Chief of Staff. One, you said that they go out in the community. You said that the planner goes out into the community and goes to civic association meetings?
He goes to the NPC meetings.
Right. He goes to the NPC meetings, and I did acknowledge that. What I'm saying is that at the civic association meetings, that's where I'm hearing that they would like to hear more about how the monies can be spent, because the presidents, and I don't deny that they're not going to that monthly meeting. What I'm saying is that there's a need, there's an ask from the community for that person to come and help them to identify different projects, because the NPC presidents, and I'm not throwing them under the bus or anything like that, but there have been individuals asking for that in different civic association meetings that I've been attending. So if we are not going to get a consultant, that's fine. But if you're saying that the planner can support the civic associations and come to some of the meetings, that will be great, because that was the main reason why we had asked for that position to be filled. And I understand we have to work together around the budget, but we also want to support what the community is asking for. And I'm not saying nobody's complaining about the planner, but people want to know more about projects so they can start using the money. That's one of the reasons why the money hasn't been used, because they're not real clear on what they can use the money for.
Okay, we can reiterate that.
Chief of Staff Washington. Yes,
Yes, fine. We can talk about it later. Thank you.
I would just like to get a flow going, okay? Because I actually, in Vice Chair Harley was a step ahead even. I mean, because we do have a question just on that issue, actually, a question number 10. So
okay.
we are moving and we can revisit that. So I just wanted to finish up with OMB, okay? So we can move right along. So Council Member Oliver, do you have a question for OMB?
No, I will come back. I think it's under 9 or 10. I'll wait till we get to that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. And Council Member Gray, do you have a question for OMB?
Mine's about NPCs also. I echo Councilwoman Harley. I'll wait till then.
I will make sure we have plenty of time to discuss that question. Okay. So thank you very much. So with that, I want to turn it over because this is a new department. So I want to spend the time. Is first, I believe, Deputy Chief of Staff Safran, the Mayor's office, and then Commissioner Starkey. I believe that's the order we're going to go in.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, Mr. Safran, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, City Council members. As Councilmember Johnson said, my name is James Safran from the Mayor's Office, and along with Commissioner Jeff Starkey and our Acting Planning Director, Timothy Lucas, we are here today to discuss the proposed budget for the Reorganized Department of Land Use and Planning. The proposed reorganization of our existing Department of Planning and Development is designed to streamline the existing city land use activities and ensure that moving forward, the city is better able to handle all of our land use responsibilities. The reorganization brings land use functions that are currently spread across 3 separate city departments and under the daily direction of 3 different department or directors, instead under the supervision of just 1 individual and 1 department. So regardless of whether the project involves the construction of a new building or the renovation of a house, or simply the installation of, let's say, a water tank in the basement, our citizens, as well as the larger community of contractors that do work every day in our city and utilize these land use functions, will need only in the future to go to 1 office to submit the necessary documentation and commence the required reviews. This reorganization is being proposed in part in response to feedback that the Mayor's Office, and I believe City Council as well, has received over the years from the public, encouraging the city to better streamline these services. During the presentation this afternoon, Mr. Starkey, who will, if budget is approved, will serve as the director of this reorganized department, and Mr. Lucas, who will be the deputy director of planning under this reorganized department, will assist me in answering your questions. As the council member said, at this point, I believe Mr. Starkey is going to make a few introductory comments as well. And from there, we're happy to begin answering all of your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Safran. And Councilmember Darby, I would like to recognize you as I did receive your message. Do you have a question now?
No, I was looking to be recognized.
Perfect. All right. Thank you very much, council member. All right. So the floor is now yours, Commissioner Starkey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening to City Council members. I just wanted to thank the administration for giving me an opportunity to be a part of the reorganization of the Department of Land Use and Planning. I'm very excited to be part of this organization. And that's all I just wanted to add, a little personal in terms of thanking the administration for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Starkey. And I guess we'll just dive right into it. There's, I know, a lot to cover. So just, I guess, first, just get a high level overview or like a diagram of how the internal and external operations will work in a more efficient fashion. Because I think it's nice to talk about it and talk about the numbers, but like, how is everybody going to interact in this ecosystem?
Council member, I'd be happy to answer that question if you'd like, or I believe the next slide was the departmental vision. So
so we can go into that.
Okay. And I think as we go through this, we'll answer what I think you're getting at. In the large picture, the vision of this proposed reorganized department, if approved, first and foremost, is to provide and support the responsible, intelligent growth of our community. I'm not sure if WITN has this slide up, but there we go. There are 2 divisions that will, 3 divisions, excuse me, an administrative, which is largely just the director in an AA, and then 2 day-to-day operational divisions, Division of Land Use and the Division of Planning. The Division of Land Use will ensure that all city development processes are properly integrated to allow the city government to effectively review and respond to all the appropriate requests to develop land in Wilmington. And the Division of Planning shall support the municipal government by providing and promoting creative and thoughtful perspective direction on how broader urban planning issues and priorities can be identified, researched, and implemented. If WITN.
Next slide. Next slide.
There we go. The priorities for FY2023. Some of this, I think, is another way of looking at those visionary statements that we made. WITN, just a couple slides ahead there. There we go, one more. Almost. We're on priorities for FY23. Ensure timely and responsible review and completion of land use functions utilizing the greater operational efficiencies that will come from this. We will create an environment of greater transparency and more accountability to the public in the area of land use by being streamlined. There we are. And provide city leadership and the public with well thought out and timely urban planning research. This is a function that exists throughout county governments and municipal governments throughout the country. And frankly, in most places, you will find these functions coalesce together in one department, working together every day. And that's the general spirit of the purpose of the reorganization and these priorities. Next slide. It's difficult to really measure success unless you can quantify it. And with that being said, there's 3 metrics that, among others, that we will be working on, one of which very basic but very obvious, measuring the total review times for land use permitting. So from the time it's a project of any scope is submitted correctly until the time it is released and approved by the city, we'll be measuring that moving forward if this reorganization is approved. We will also try to measure the number of land use applications, no matter how big or small, that are submitted initially in compliance with the city's intake processes. There have been many instances, I think, that we've had over the time, at least anecdotally has been shared with the city, where sometimes there's confusion about what's required on the front end, and that leads to confusion. So we're going to first try to ensure those intake processes are held up and complied with. The more compliance we get on the front end, the less confusion we'll have as the review processes take place. And one metric that the Division of Planning will utilize is how many recommendations from the 2018 City Comprehensive Plan have been implemented or are now actively in the progress of moving towards implementation.
And if I may just add one little note on item number 2, we have 2 now permit coordinators that'll be doing the intake. So hopefully we'll eliminate any errors in terms of what's required to be submitted. So we'll get back to those constituents right away if there's something that hasn't been submitted that's required to be submitted.
All right, Mr. Safran.
Sure, and I'm gonna, along with the commissioner, we're gonna jointly handle number 1, and then the commissioner will handle many of the remaining questions. So number 1, discuss the potential efficiencies for this departmental reorganization. Some of this is a repeat of what you saw and heard on the previous slides. So just to briefly summarize, by bringing the staff together under the direction of one department director, it will streamline the movement of these projects in and out of city government. It'll ensure that the public and both city council and the mayor's office have one place to go to hold staff and leadership accountable for the movement of these projects. Centralizing them both operationally and physically will actually have day-to-day efficiencies as well. And creating what is essentially a one-stop shop experience, both physically if you're coming into the building or hopefully eventually online, I think will also improve the overall user experience for the public. Next slide. Costs and savings, that was the gist of this question. First off, we expect there to undoubtedly be operational and time savings for members of the public. They will no longer be going to move a project through our land use operation processes by going partially to L&I and partially to planning and development, partially to here or there. They'll be going to one place with one intake desk, dealing with one director. That will undoubtedly create efficiencies for the public as they interact with the city, which creates less of a hurdle for trying to do this type of work in our city. The reorganization does not cause any layoffs as a result of the staff who are participating in these functions. And overall, there's no significant change in the personnel responsibilities. There is a small fiscal impact associated with this, largely associated with the creation of an additional administrative assistant for this reorganized department.
Councilmember Spadola.
Thank you. Why wouldn't we hold off on that, creating that new position at least for a year, just to see how it goes? So with the tax hike on the table, I'm really, all these vacant positions, I think, the administration, we need to curtail as much as possible, and here's a prime opportunity to do that. So could we push that position off for a year?
That's a fair point. Commissioner Starkey, I know you've worked with this role in the past. Could you describe a little about the role that this AA typically plays?
Well, AA would be my assistant in terms of coordinating all of the meetings and coordination of events that we're having. So it's very difficult for me to kind of control that without having an AA. You can't imagine the amount of stuff that comes into this office or will be coming into this new department in terms of tracking, scheduling meetings and so forth. So I think it's very important for us to have this position, to be very honest.
Sure, but I mean, can we take those, the job function of that position from one of the others, since we're merging two departments? It just seems like those job functions should exist somewhere else.
No, not at AA. AA is a whole totally different ballgame.
Chief of Staff Washington, you have a.
Yes, Councilmember Spadola, just about every department in the city, all the directors have an administrative assistant. They do the work of, providing letters and answering the phones and scheduling the meetings and things of that nature. If he didn't have an administrative assistant, all of that would basically fall on the commissioner. And we're talking about two different departments now. So the AA and license and inspection could not be shared because she would have to report to one singular person.
Sure, I didn't realize the position was an AA for Mr. Starkey, but
yes.
Still, I think my frustrations that spurred that question are more that, I still think we need to see some concessions from all these vacant positions that are open still. Surely we can cut out some fat and reduce the property tax hike. Thank you.
Yes.
Next slide.
Chairman Johnson, yep.
Specify any major development projects that are in the pipeline that will be impacted. Answer major land use projects submitted to the city for development and or permitting review will benefit from this streamlined proposal reorganization. Moving forward, these sorts of projects will be largely interacting with staff in just one department under one supervisor and one director. There are several different properties that are in the pipeline, but again, they're proposed. They're not actually came to fruition yet, but we have several of them in the pipeline currently that will be impacted by this streamlined process. Next slide. Share any plans for marketing this change to best attract development to the city. Point number one, should the proposed reorganization be approved through this budget process, the city will utilize a wide variety of communication channels to inform both the public at large as well as our development contract community that regularly does work in the city. In addition, initial and ongoing communication will inform all of these groups above that both the changes in structure and how it improves the regular land use interaction with the city. Next slide. This is a breakdown of the actual reorganization department. There'll be 3 different divisions in there, and I'm not going to go through them. There'll be administrative division, then there'll be a land use division, as well as a plan use division. You'll see the description underneath each one of them. Next slide. David.
Sure. The tentative location for each of these divisions will have admin and the land use division located on the 3rd floor of the city county building. The planning division will be obviously in the same building, but on the 7th floor. Next slide. Thank you. So with any reorganization, you're obviously going to have positions that are, there may be some title changes, or there may be a need to adjust the purpose of the position as it relates to the reorganization. So what you see here is a net impact of just one new position, which we spoke about earlier, the administrative assistant. And at the bottom, you'll see, again, there's no layoffs associated with this proposed reorganization.
Mr. Safran,
sure.
We have a question here.
Sure.
Yeah, Mr. Safran, is for our city code, is that going to be updated to reflect any additional charges that this new department is going to be charged with, that's in addition to what the planning department already did?
If you could jump back So we can have that slide up. That's a great point. There are a number of places that in the city code where there may be a reference to the former department. We've had those discussions thus far with the city law department as it relates to that. It may be more of a housekeeping measure, but that's certainly something that we've been discussing. So in the event that's the case, we'll ensure that the language reflects that change.
Thank you.
All right.
Alrighty. Jeff, do you want to take this one?
Specified duration of vacancy, specified timeframe for filling position, justified a need position. There's currently one vacant position for the reorganized that will be existing moving forward. That'll be the zoning code enforcement officer. It's actually posted right now. It's been vacant since since December, I'm sorry. There are two positions scheduled to be deleted as part of the FY2023 budget. Director of Planning and Development, vacant since March of 2022, and the Plans Grant Coordinator, vacant since May of 2021. Next slide. David.
Sure. Again, this is this question sort of walks us through a similar previous slide. Again, when you have a reorganization, there's going to be positions that are transferred from one department to another, or the funding from one position will be used to support another position. So I'll let you look through it. The net increase, again, is just that one admin, one AA position that we spoke of. And with a scope, the permit coordinator position does have a small scope increase to its function.
We do have some questions.
Yes,
Mr. Sofrin, Vice Chair Harley.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I noticed it on two previous slides, but I see it on this slide where it mentions proposed deleted positions. The planning grants coordinator. When I think about a grants coordinator, I think about someone that does the research to go out to look for grants that the city can match. So one, is that the position and is that the responsibility of that person? And then secondly, is that going to be absorbed in one of these other positions? Because I would think that would be a benefit to the city to have a grants coordinator.
So a very good point. I'll speak briefly to it, and then I think Tim can add to it. As part of this reorganization, a number of the positions that will be remaining in Division of Planning will be supporting that grant function, so either supporting existing grants and the oversight that is required with it, or trying to seek out new grants. Tim, anything to add to that?
Yes, David. Good evening, City Council. My name is Tim Lucas. I'm Acting Director of Planning and Development. The Planning Grants Coordinator position handled other responsibilities in addition to planning or applying for individual grants. Most of those responsibilities have been reallocated to other city, other planning staff. Specifically, the NPC coordination was immediately transferred to a senior planning staff member.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Oliver, leave your next.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That is one of my questions, what Tim just said. Now, the MPC, he's been promoted to a senior, and that goes back to what Councilwoman Harley had stated. I didn't understand why would we remove, because he is up there, as he just said, doing searching for planning grants, et cetera. He doesn't have time to come out in to the various civic associations, because he definitely hasn't been in the 3rd district or the NPC's meeting. And it goes back to what we've been said since last year. We need someone to come out for the various NPCs. That's why so much money sitting at these NPCs, and I hear individuals saying it's easy, and I do have a copy of it, but it's not easy when you have new members. They are new members. Most of them, the seasoned members, have retired and moved on. So you have the new ones. And if you look at all that money is sitting there, we definitely need a person to come out to instruct them or whatever it takes to assist this money to move on. Dover is definitely saying, why is there so much money sitting in various NPCs? And what it is that they're just not seasoned enough to know what's going on. That's one thing. Another thing, Tim, I have a question. To my understanding, Tim in planning development, he doesn't have an AA. His AA has been removed. So I'd like to know, is he going to get his AA back?
So I believe that was a two-part question, so I don't know how you guys want to handle it.
I can do my best to answer both, and then if Tim or Tanny have
I guess the question is, does Tim have an AA? Because I know all departments normally have an AA, and I know his AA was removed when the previous director was there. So I was wondering, because someone answered, did he receive, is he going to get his AA put back in the budget? Because he's doing the same thing that Jeff is doing, so why wouldn't he have an AA? Because someone answered that. Or maybe he is back in the budget, but I don't see it.
Well, I mean, can I answer, David? I mean, we'll share AA. I mean, that's what we do in here. My deputy commissioner and I share AA. So we'll share our AA in terms, she won't be doing solely my work, but she'll also be doing some of the other work as well. But, you know, as we're set up in Illinois currently, we share AA. Deputy commissioner and I both share AA.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
That's it.
All right, Councilmember Spadola.
Thank you. I think I'm still struggling to understand how, you know, when you think of two organizations merging and efficiencies go up, whether it's an external merger or internal with departments like this, generally speaking, costs go down. So I'm still struggling to understand how this creates more efficiencies, but costs are going up.
Sorry, Council Member Spadola, you will see a commensurate reduction when we get to the L&I, Department of License and Inspection. You'll see a reduction of the same amount as the increase in the Department of Land Use, with the exception of the AA. So you'll see those positions are just simply transferred over into the land use. So you'll see a decrease in those personal services and some MS&E associated with that.
But I thought Dave said earlier, overall, it's still a net increase, even taking that all into account.
part of that net increase to a certain degree relates to the creation of this net one new position of administrative assistant.
Okay, so my original point still stands.
Mhm.
We're supposed to be creating more efficiencies, but we're not if costs are going up.
Well,
Costs are going down in the other department.
But I'm just talking, but if you blend the budgets together, because for the city as a whole, it's all coming from one pot of money. This merger is going to cost more money, is what at the end of the day.
if I can, just for the clarification, it's not a wholesale merger of the entire functions of the existing L&I and the existing planning and development. A portion of L&I's activities are shifting over, but there still will be a department of L&I performing the traditional code enforcement activities. So I realize it's a new concept, and reorganization is something that we don't touch on for every budget process, but just to clarity there, it's not two departments being merged into one.
Okay, I see that, but my original point is still correct then. I'm open to being told I'm misunderstanding something, but we're merging where there's some sort of merger going on here, not a total merger, but costs are going up at the end of the day.
And council member, you can also look at it this way. Because of the efficiency, we are likely going to increase the amount of work that we can, service through the land use department, which will, actually drive more revenue coming through that department. If we can push more projects as a matter of having an efficient operation, that draws more revenue, and it may very well just pay for itself, because we're talking about a negligible amount of increase in the Department of Land Use.
Okay.
I think the most important part is we're satisfied that, our community in terms of being more efficient. So it's more of a user-friendly process for them to come in and work, and hopefully we'll get more projects that come in that want to do business with us, which eventually turns into higher building permits and so forth. So I think that's more important.
I agree that is super important, but also keeping costs down and utilizing technology to bring costs down is super important. I guess, and this is, I'll just end with this. And Dave, I'd love to follow up with you about it. I'd be very curious to see what regulations are driving people to get permits that perhaps we don't need, that could result in a happier city because people don't need to run to get a permit for something and less demand on city workers. So I don't need an answer for that, but I think that's something to follow up on. Thank you.
Thank you.
First round of questions, Councilmember Gray.
Thank you for recognizing me. I would like to compliment the administration for finally setting up this department. There has been a lot of feedback in the community for years about how difficult it was to get permits and how long it took to get permits to do various things related to construction, building, et cetera. So I think this has been a long time needed department, and I compliment you for finally doing it. And back to what people were saying, I think people will be more inclined to want to do business with the city if it's more streamlined, because that's been their complaint. They have to wait for the permits, and that can generate more work because people won't be as reluctant to do renovations and upgrades and things if they know it's a smooth process to get the permits. So I think it's a good idea, and I don't have any problems with it. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Walsh, I do have you being here tonight.
Okay, that's all I was asking,
Okay,
Mr.
good.
Chair.
No problem. And Councilmember Oliver, leave the
Yes.
second round of questions.
Thank you. I'm not going to beat the dead horse, but I'm wondering if we can talk about this offline regarding the NPC position being reinstalled and the planning department.
Just a point of clarification, there was never an NPC position that was eliminated. It was just consultant dollars associated with that.
Correct. Well, I mean, Debbie Boone, she used to do it, Mr. Lightfoot. So just to consult, so the consultant. So is that something we could talk about offline?
Yes.
We could have an offline conversation on how we're going to proceed moving forward. I think that's
Okay, that's all. Thank you. Okay.
Councilmember Gray.
Thank you. I just would like to reiterate that I want to be involved in that NPC conversation because I think the money's just sitting there. The community wants to know why, but they don't send their, well, I'm not going to say they don't, but frequently the president or the representative doesn't go to the NPC meeting. So even if the information is given, it doesn't spread out to the community. And I'd like to know who is the person that is going to the NPC meetings. We keep discussing that there's a representative going to the meetings. What is his name?
Okay, it's Matt Harris.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. That's all.
So, Vice Chair Harley, I have you as.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. A point of clarification, the person is not going out into the community. That person is having a monthly meeting and inviting the NPC chairs to that meeting. So just as a point of clarification, and what we're talking about is that person actually, when requested, not every month, but when requested, if a community civic association needs some clarity around the NPC proposals and how that money can be used, we're just saying, can that person come out? Because right now, that's not what's happening. But that, again, is something we can talk about offline, but I wanted to clarify these meetings that we're talking about and who's going where. They're calling the monthly meeting, but not going to the civic association meetings. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So let's actually, I kind of like to streamline things. So let's actually move to question 9, if we could, WITN, because we keep, I know NPCs is a pretty big topic, so I want to make sure we leave adequate time. So if we could address number 9, what the funds look like, where the path forward is. And obviously, I know we're not going to be able to complete everything tonight, but if we could get just a snapshot of where the plan for the NPCs are.
Sure. I think Tim's going to answer, or at least start to explain what's on this slide, and we'll do our best to answer the questions that come.
Sure, Mr. Chair. So the question is provide an update to capital funds available for each of the neighborhood planning councils per NPC per capital budget. You can see the chart on the screen breaking down the remaining funds per NPC district. Like we mentioned, there's a senior member of our staff, Senior Planner 2, who's dedicated. It currently serves as a resource and liaison between the city and NPC district leadership. That staff person actually staffs their leadership meeting, and we host that leadership meeting, or at least historically have, prior to COVID here at the city planning office. That staff person also provides advice and guidance to the individual district leadership persons on how to identify and spend those allocated funds on capital projects. We actually have several pieces of literature documentation. We have a neighborhood planning council handbook. We have instructions on how to fill out the various applications for grant funding. And we actually have a rules and participation guidelines handout for the individual leadership council members. So we are happy to meet one-on-one, either with Mr. Harrison or myself. So please let us know how we can help. The second part of the question, what is the last time NPCs were allocated funding? And that was from the 2014 capital budget, making funds available starting fiscal year 2016.
Okay. All right, Vice Chair Harley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you mentioned that there are documents, and they are. My question to you is, even though those documents are there, there's still a need, and you did just mention, you know, as needed, that office will be available, because it really is needed. Even after sending out the documents, the handbook, there seems to still be a disconnect. And as we can see here, we have all these dollars just sitting, and I know for a fact, because I've heard it over and over again, people are just not clear. And I don't think it's that they have not read the handbook. What's not clear is the type of projects that can be utilized with the funding. So I appreciate you sharing what you shared, but again, there really is a need, and it's communicated quite a bit. And all I'm asking, and I think my council colleagues are saying, is that upon request, can the individual come out and, you know, answer some of these questions? And then secondly, when was the last time the handbook has been updated?
Yes, to answer both questions, we're more than happy to meet the leadership out in the community. We could make a list of examples of different possible projects listed by type. Now, they do have to be capital in nature. They have to be spent on public property, you know, public rights of way, public parks, and so on. I have a whole list of project examples I could share with any council person, and we'd be welcome to host a meeting here at the city or out in the community to discuss exactly what a capital project is and what a capital project is not. And we have the entire history of the NPC's expenditures that we could pull examples from and talk to the community about.
Awesome, thank you. That's exactly what I was hoping, you know, we could do. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember McCoy, do you have, I have you as present. Do you have a question?
Yes, I did. Thank you very much, Chair. I actually had a quick question for the planning director. When it came to the NPCs, one of the things that we actually, my question is more so about the beautification projects that are actually being done. Once they're completed, we've done our due diligence. Who's actually responsible for the upkeep of these projects?
Most likely, it would depend on the managing department for that particular piece of property. If it were in a city park, it would be likely be the City Parks Department. If it was in a right of way, likely the Department of Public Works and so on. And unless they have some sort of contract arrangement with another entity.
Okay. Thank you. The reason why I asked is because my NBC president is actually very good at going to these leadership meetings, and she was under the impression that, of course, the city would maintain, you know, whatever project we actually completed, the city would maintain it. We've kind of were like the start of the whole community signs up, and our sign has been down for quite some time, and we're about to replace it. But then we come to find out, oh no, that's on you. So you'll have to, even though it's no fault of anyone's own.
Yeah, there are some
so
nuances when the MPC project creates new maintenance responsibilities.
Okay.
So those could be discussed individually, and I'd be happy to speak with you offline about that.
Thank you. I'm like, I really would, yeah, because our numbers are dwindling. We already have one last project we're trying to get done, and we don't want to have to basically spend money again for something we've already taken care of. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Oliver.
Yeah, this is last on this conversation for me. I'm just looking at the total amount, and it doesn't take a rock scientist that individuals in these NCPs, besides the 8th district, could use some assistance. It was $40,000 already sitting there from last budget hearing last year, and nothing was done with it. I've spoken to Matt, who is a senior planner, and he is not happy. Put the elephant in the room. This is not his job to come out and help the neighborhood planning councils. I've spoken to him on several occasions. He does conduct a meeting once a month for the leadership in the city building or on Zoom, but to come out and direct people for various projects, that's not his forte. He has said that to me. We talked on various occasions. So I'm just looking at the amount. The money was already there. I don't understand why not hire a consultant just to take care of this, but you know, I just don't get it. So all that money is sitting there, and then we ask, and council members ask for various projects, and we can be using this if we had somebody opposed to, asking administration for various projects. And I don't think, as it's been stated, that people don't have the information. It's just that a lot of these individuals are new. Wayne Dobson just took over. She's brand new. I just met with her on Zoom. So it's just that a lot of these people are not as seasoned as they used to be. And I don't see why the $40,000 was already allocated in the planning department for someone to come out and to assist. So we just keep looking at all this money, the state, look at that money sitting there. It makes no sense to me. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay. Can we move to slide 10?
Councilmember Johnson, again, I think we may have touched on this one in the previous question, but nevertheless, discuss any funds budgeted for the neighborhood planning councils and/or resources for the NPCs. As we know, the funding for the NPCs comes from the city's biannual capital budget, as opposed to this current budget we're discussing as the annual operational one. And as Tim has explained, in the new planning, in this reorganized planning division and reorganized planning and land use department, the staff is going to try to, and I think it echoes some of the concerns that have been shared by a number of the council members. There may be guidelines, there may be rules and regulations, but there also, I think, can be along with that, a more practical explanation of how things have been used in the past, examples of how they're used, either just NPC funding or NPC funding leveraged with other amounts of funding. And so we're going to try to make sure we provide those examples that are just as, along with the rules, but that are practical explanations. And I think the point was well made just now, that we can't assume that NPC members are always going to have long institutional knowledge of these rules. They may be coming on initially, and we're going to continue to try to provide not just the rules and regulations, but also a practical side to how the funds can be used.
Okay, and just as a final note, Mr. Safran, I do, this was a contested point last budget season, And, you know, I have heard from many of my colleagues about the issue. So I do think we need obviously an offline meeting about a comprehensive plan. Now that we're kind of opening Pandora's box and looking at new ways we can streamline, surely we can spend this money down, because it's a constant point. Even accessing the MPC is always a problem. I try to steer constituents to it, but it's very, you know, it's just a kind of a black box. So I think there's some ways we can maybe look at how we can get this money spent. And then we can.
Mr. Chair, if I may add, and we'll get to the bottom of it. Let me just assure you that, you know, we'll sit down and put together a path forward. So that'll be one of our priorities in terms of trying to get this issue resolved for council members.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Now I would like to move to, again, I'm going out of order. I like to jump around a little bit. If I could move to question number 6 about demos. This is obviously a big budget item. Can you give the breakdown of you know, what the need is, and considering how aggressive the city is? I know there's some legislation right now. Is this even enough money? You know, do we actually need more money in that budget line?
Well, let me just add, you know, demolition is always a tricky subject in terms of budgeting. But, you know, this past year, we've had some major demolitions that we had to incur as a result of some structural issues that happened unbeknownst to us until we heard from the constituents. We had a big one on 618 North Broome Street, which cost about $160,000 to demolish because it was a rather large building. So the whole side wall, and if you go to the next page, you'll see some of the pictures of some of the conditions that we deal with. So we've had probably 3 big ones in the last year or so. 4th Street was a big one, 700 block of West 6th as well. And the illustrations on the next page will show you some of the conditions that we deal with. But, you know, demolitions is always a tricky subject in terms of taking care of some of these properties that are structurally unstable. I don't know if you can go to that slide where some of the pictures are. So the one on the far left is 700 block of East 6th Street, 3-story building, huge building. The front wall started bulging out. It was a 96-year-old gentleman who was living in there. He's since passed away, but you know, it got so bad we had to demolish it. The picture in the middle is 618 Broome Street, where the whole side wall just collapsed out. Obviously a vacant property. And the one on the far right was East 4th Street. It was a result of another demolition that happened probably about 10 years ago, where the wall started failing. We in turn removed the wall and found this behind the wall where the existing building started collapsing. So that one was demolished as well. So those are just 3 of the large ones. We have some other ones on DuPont Street, on 8th Street, on 2nd Street as well, that are being demolished or have been demolished by now. So.
And Commissioner, is there, you may not know the answer to this, but is there a cost-efficient way that we can perform these demos throughout the city, considering how old the city is? Because I forgot where I saw the numbers, but even if we use all of or half the ARP funds, it still wouldn't be enough to cover the whole city. So is there different methods we're looking at, more cost-effective ways to do this?
We're always looking at different methods, but you know, obviously during COVID, all the prices went up, so all of our costs went up. But you know, the biggest issue is the brick wall that has to be restored once you demolish them, because most houses are built in a row and they depend on each other in order to survive. So once you take one down and you expose that wall is not an exterior wall. It becomes an exterior wall, which is the problem, and that's why we require brick. Years ago, we still allowed stucco. The stucco started failing because the moisture used to get behind it. You didn't know there was a problem until the wall failed. So that's why we require masonry or brick wall to be installed back. So we are looking at different methods. We've talked to different contractors on coming up with different solutions. But the important part is making sure we have a stable wall to go back in there, because the existing residents will be responsible for if something was to happen to it.
Okay. Somebody has Council Member McCoy.
Excuse me. Thank you, Chair. Actually, I think Director Starkey just answered that my question. It was basically about that very third picture where they have the stucco and the brick. Even if there is actually brick that has secured the outside wall, what happens if that is actually not enough to truly keep that wall from being compromised? Like, who's actually responsible?
Well, typically what happens in a row house, they share a party wall, and your property line goes, it's an imaginary line that goes down through the center of the wall. So it's 4 inches on your side, 4 inches on the opposite side. And the objective is to make sure that wall is protected. And you don't want that burden to be on that person that's left. But once demolition has occurred, the value of that property is basically zero because there's no building there anymore. And most people tend to just kind of ignore it after that. So we want to make sure that we stabilize that wall and to make sure that it's secure so that the existing person that's still there doesn't be burdened with that financial cost.
Okay. Well, so may I follow up, Chair?
Yes, please.
Okay, so basically then the question is, if we actually had a contractor who did right and actually put a brick wall as the exterior wall, but yet the wall still gave way and made it unsafe to live in, who's responsible for that? If the contractor did it, I guess we quote unquote believe that they did it correctly, but yet the house became unstable and you couldn't live in it. Even though the person who lived in the house, they were not the ones responsible for, you know, having that middle tooth or whatever you want to call it, like taken out. Their house became unstable and their wall made it whereas though they could no longer live in there. Like, so how's that? Who's responsible for that is the question.
Well, I mean, they're case by case, but typically when we get, typically when we get involved, it's at the extreme emergency cases. But when it's a typical demolition that's being done by a private property owner, that private property owner would be responsible for it. But we do probably about maybe 8 a year, 9 a year, somewhere around there. But when we're getting involved, usually it's severe enough that it's causing some problems.
All right, that's all, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. So let's actually jump back. We'll go back in order again. Let's jump to
that's a finished one on Broome Street.
Okay. Thank you very much, Commissioner. Let's jump back to number 4, if we could, the budget line for the historic preservation planner.
Sure.
Yep.
Handle this one.
Yes, Mr. Chair. The historic preservation planner administers the Section 106 reviews and related consultation on behalf of the State Historic Preservation Office for applicable HUD programs and other federal project reviews. The position provides technical assistance to city departments and constituents regarding best practices, the National Register program, as well as the historic tax credit and other incentivized preservation programs. As shown on the slide, the total salary of $63,925 will be partially funded by an historic preservation grant known as the Certified Local Government Grant in the amount of $12,784.91. The second part of the question, 4A, the city's annual match for this position is $51,140.09.
Thank you very much. Could we go to question 5 about the consultant budget line? I know we had some talk earlier this afternoon about that. What is the current plan with the current consultants line that you have?
I'll take that one. Discuss the planned uses of $170K budgeted for consultants. Specify vendor's name, amount of contract, expiration date, length of contract, how long it has been doing business with the vendor, and scope and services. And 5B, specify vendors, if any vendors or DBEs. The first one is our consultant, is our plan review consultant. He does over our commercial reviews. He's at $95,000 a year, 1-year contract. If you recall, some years ago, we eliminated the plan review position. The second one, he's not a DBA, unfortunately. The next one is a structural engineer, it's Landis and Larson. His projects are typically around vacant properties and that are having structural issues with the building. We call him as needed. His contract uses around $25,000 a year, typically because we don't have the expertise to do structural analysis. So always call him for his expertise in that sense. And there's one that's not listed, it's not a consultant, but a contractors. All of our demolition contractors are DBEs, and their contracts vary. As I mentioned, the one on Broom Street was roughly around $160,000 for that demolition site. One on 6th Street, East 6th Street was around 95. And 4th Street, I think, was around 85, somewhere in that vicinity. But all of our demolition contractors are DBEs, which is typically how we try to operate with the small guys. And those are the guys that are hiring the local residents to do work. So that's why we tend to lend towards those guys in terms of doing our demolition work. Specify the time frame for implementation of the 2028 comprehensive plan. Ongoing plan division activities will often relate to prospective implementation of comprehensive plan and specific takeaways from that document. Next slide.
Wait a minute. Chris, can you go ahead, my hand up for a question?
Yes, so Councilmember Oliver, the floor is yours.
Sure, I was, could you go back? I was looking at the historical planner. Is that an increase in the salary? I was just trying to check. You just passed it. Right here. Does that mean she's getting an increase? I guess that would be Tim.
Yes, Madam Councilperson. That I don't know offhand, as I wasn't responsible for last year's budget, but I'd be happy to go back and find the answer for you.
Okay. Dave, could you answer that? I think that's it.
If I can, and we'll get you the exact numbers, Councilmember Oliver. But the two numbers you see reflected, the first number is simply the percentage of the overall cost that the city does not have to pay, but rather comes from the grant that we get every single year. As part of getting that grant, we're required to match it. And so I think it's a 20-80 split between what the city typically covers and what the grant typically covers. But we can give you a historical breakdown of that if you'd like. We'll
no, I was just looking at it from when I looked at it from last year, just like she has just a little increase. I just was double checking to ask, was that still a little small increase? That's all.
Okay. I believe we have OMB Director Greco, Mr. Hayford. Was there?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the salary includes, just like the other non-union employees, it includes a 2% projected COLA.
Which means it's just a little increase, is that correct?
Yes, 2% from last year.
Okay. And that's non-union, correct?
She's actually considered what's called non-allocated grant employee. Yes, non-union.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Councilmember Walsh.
Yes, could we go back to the one that had 25,000? There it is. The structural engineer. Could you tell me exactly how many of these contracts this person can do for $25,000?
I don't have the number in front of me, but I can get the number of services that he provided to us last year.
Yeah, if you could, I would appreciate it. I can't imagine it's that many.
Well, he charges hourly, so I mean, if he's at a job site, it's usually an hour or 2 hours at a time.
All right, I'd like the number.
But I'll get that. All right.
No, actually, I have a follow-up. I don't know who can best answer this. It might be Commissioner, it might be Mr. Safran. I noticed on the consultant line, I look at our projected budget and I look at what we spent so far. And I noticed that the $90,000 consultant line, there's only about $2,200, actually $2,200 almost exactly spent. is there a reason why that there's about $88,000 not spent in that consultant line?
Well, I think.
Well, currently,
I'm sorry.
Well, currently the plan review is in L&I's budget currently. So you would have to look in L&I's budget to see what that cost is.
Because it's a reorganization from the current Department of Planning and Development into the reorganized Land Use and Planning Department, when you look at that budget sheet, council member, it is a bit of an apples and oranges comparison. You're looking at a significant different department in FY22. And so,
Can I just
Sure.
further clarify? I mean, even prior to the change of land use, I think just to clarify the question, just for the current planning department, there was $90,000 budget in this current fiscal year 2022's budget. Why is there just like $2,200 expended year to date?
I mean, is it that planning just didn't use it and that's just what happened?
And I believe some of that was for the $40,000 for the consultant. I believe some money was also for the comprehensive plan for 2028. I don't want to share with you, but I believe that's what it had to do with.
So I think that the funding set aside for the comprehensive plan work was anticipated for some of the many recommendations that were put into that plan. I know some of that work was conducted by city staff, but we can provide you if you'd like, and I don't want to give, without having all the facts here, we can certainly follow up with Marshall and give you a breakdown of what funding was utilized and what wasn't, and whether we were able to utilize city staff instead. We had previously discussed a portion of those funds relating to potential NPC staffing support, but we'll certainly follow up and provide you an explanation for why thus far those funds haven't been spent.
Okay, all right, and thank you very much, Deputy Chief of Staff. Now, moving on to question 6, kind of the same, on the same line. What about the $15,000 in temps? What's the plan for that?
I believe you're referring to question 7. If I'm
question 7, yes.
Jeff will handle this one. Jeff, are you there?
He's muted.
I got it. We have $15,000 budgeted for a temporary person to come assist us. If you don't know, Delmarva is doing a lot of gas line replacement and meters and put meters outside. So in order to achieve their schedule and issue all of their permits, we brought a temporary person in to assist us to help out with facilitating that process. So that's what the $15,000 is for temporary employee.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Oliver.
Yes, last question. Do non-union members get sick leave and pay leave or not normally?
Sure.
Who said that?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, just okay. Yeah, vacation. No. Consultants. I didn't mean my note is the consultants. Do we have consultants that get sick pay and vacation pay? That's my question. As a consultant.
No.
Not that
No.
Okay.
Okay, can we have a point of order? Seems like everybody's answering at once. Chief of Staff Washington, do you have the answer?
Not that I'm aware of. We don't give sick time and vacation time to consultants.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Then moving right along, question number 8, just do you have anything to highlight on the planned use of membership fund?
Oh, I think it's self-explanatory. I mean, funding for professional, planning division, partial funding for professional accreditation for city planners, land use. We pay for all ICC memberships for building inspectors and their code-related training that's associated with their CEUs, their accreditation credits. And the last one, wearing apparels for their safety equipment related issues relative to being in the field. And that's as per union contract.
Perfect. Thank you, Commissioner. Moving right along, we already hit 9 and 10, moving to question 11, just about the revenue collected over the past few fiscal years. What does it look like?
And, I just included, the large scale revenue that we bring in, like building permits. As you can see, even during COVID, we were pretty steady in terms of continuing to increase, or not increase, but issue permits. When COVID hit, we never stopped, and our office continued to come into the office. So we were still issuing permits. And as you can see, we're doing pretty good permit wise. And then subdivision fees are illustrated in the slide itself.
And I think I touched on the mayor's budget presentation, but is this a historic high for building permit fees? I mean, it's just, has Wilmington ever reached this before?
Absolutely, we have.
Okay, what years?
I can get it for you. I tracked about, I have them for probably about 15, 20 years.
Okay.
I'll get you the data. I don't know off the top of my head.
I mean, because if looking at the track, I mean, you may be, over, you could be up to 5 million this year. I mean, that's been reached before?
Oh, no, absolutely not. Not 5 million. That's stretching it, but we're pretty close. I mean, considering.
Okay.
I mean, this is a good year for us, and we've only tracked it up to March of this year for those. But with the streamlining, hopefully we can increase and attract more developers and homeowners and people that are improving their properties. But keep in mind the cost of construction is going up too, so we're benefiting as a result of that as well.
And now, do you have anything on the organizational chart that you haven't touched on yet? I know you showed the big chart, but do you have a smaller breakdown?
Yeah, that's just the organization chart, and it's self-explanatory. You see where everybody's reporting to. As I mentioned before, there'll be 3 different divisions: the admin division, planning division, and land use division.
Excellent. And do you have a proposed, or do you know what areas, if there was a 2% reduction in your budget, what areas might or could potentially be downsized?
That council member, Chairman Johnson, that's basically, and I hate to say it's like a canned question, but we will actually have to get together and discuss what areas he could possibly reduce and what that impact will be to the department.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right. Now, are there any, well, actually, I'm going to kick it to the public first. Is there any comments from the public? Questions or comments from the public? All right. Going once, going twice. I'm now going to kick it back to council. Any final questions or comments for council? This is final questions. All right. Council member Spadola, I believe your hand was raised first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is probably more for Chief Staff Washington in regards to the 2%. I don't want us to, that's a very important proposition, and I think it demands attention. So how can we get how can council get a very formal response from all the departments as to how a 2% reduction would look?
It's going to vary from each department, and quite frankly, Councilmember Spadola, 2%, some of these budgets are slim, and it could impact their ability to deliver services. So it's something I have to look at very closely. The thing is that the budget, we went through the whole process. I had OMB meet with the departments. I met with the departments, and then the budget was presented to you. And then we get the questions maybe 3 or 4 days out before the budget is presented to council. So it doesn't really lend itself enough time for us to really vet it fully. And I don't want to do something like that haphazardly. So once we go through the hearings and we have to explore additional reductions, then it'd be a more substantive conversation.
Okay, so but council can, because that's something when we spoke a while ago, I brought up, I think I had varying degrees, 2%, 5%, 10%. But I just want to make sure we get something formal back and we don't just,
Yeah, the 2% was It was driven around how we can reduce that in our MS&A. So that's what the area we'll be looking at.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I just, thank you very much, Chief of Staff Washington. It's more the questions out there because looking at property tax increase, council, we're gonna have to weigh numbers and I don't want to, I don't want colleagues to suggest putting things on a chopping block that don't need to be on a chopping block. So that's why I just, if there's an area that is new or something, then maybe we could chop that area, Thank you very much. And Vice Chair Harley, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Speaking of salaries and chopping blocks and things of that nature, I just want to say that when council had recommended that we fill the position of the consultant to help in the community regarding the MPC position, the position was never filled. And there was never a conversation with council as it related to what the administration had decided to do about that position. And what I want to say is in the future, if we discuss putting something in the budget, it gets put in the budget, it never gets assigned, it never gets filled, and then it's decided that it gets removed. I believe that we deserve the respect of having a conversation. Number one, to ask, is it still needed? How is it going? And what decision was made by the administration? I'm just asking, that we be given the due respect. If we ask for something, it gets put in the budget, a decision is made to remove it. Give us that respect to have a conversation or a meeting about it before it's just decided to be eliminated, especially when we see where there are other recommendations for increases here and increases there, but our request just gets eliminated with no discussion and no meeting. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Councilmember Oliver, last words or comments?
It's ditto, like the ditto what Councilwoman Harley said. That was a good point. Thank you.
Okay. I see there's a member of the public with their hand raised. We already did public comment, but out of respect, we do have a little bit of time. I could turn it back to that member of the public if there's any question or comment. It's a Matt.
Hi, this is Matt Harris. Can you guys hear me?
Oh, okay. Okay, it's Matt Harris. Okay.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I was on my VPN when I was trying to raise my hand and then I couldn't get on, but I just wanted to clarify something. And Councilmember Oliver, I know we work together all of the time. I just wanted to clarify a little bit just about this NPC thing. It is my job to staff the leadership meetings, which actually I have to hop off on 1 minute and start that meeting. But I did just want to clarify that if any civic group does want me to come out and speak to them, I'm more than happy to do that. And actually I did that, Councilmember Harley, with a couple of members of your NPC just 2 weeks ago. They wrote me and had a question. So during this past year of me taking over the NPCs, I've never been asked to come out to a civic meeting and present. And I think that most people work with me know that I'm really helpful and that I would be willing to do that. And Councilmember Oliver, I wanted you to know, that, I think I've been out to enough Northeast meetings that you know that. So I just wanted to clarify that if anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to help. And, I don't mind going out to civic meetings. Do I go out to them all the time? No, that is not part of my, specific requirement as it relates to the NPCs, but if I'm always willing to help people. And I just wanted to put that out there, when my name came up, I just wanted to have that clarification. So thank you for taking my comment, even though it was after the comment period.
All right, thank you. All right, well, thank you very much, Mr. Harris. Now I'm going to turn it back to final comments by members of council. Councilmember Oliver, do you have something to say?
No, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to reiterate what Matt said. He is very helpful. I think what we're talking about tonight has nothing to do with Matt. This is a bigger picture, but I appreciate his comment. Thank you.
Okay. All right, and lastly, Vice Chair Harley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Matt, thank you for sharing that as it relates to going to one of the meetings in the 4th District. I had not been made aware of that, but I'm happy to hear that you're going out. And And then lastly, I did not even know that who was the individual that actually was the point person for the MPC. I didn't know until recently that the position was never filled. There was no real communication, to my knowledge, in terms of you taking it on and what your position was going to be, et cetera. So it's also an opportunity for better communication, from the administration, when changes are made or when things are, when something changes, just to make us aware. And I would appreciate that as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. And with that, I would like to thank Deputy Chief of Staff Safran, Commissioner Starkey, Director Greco, Mr. Hayford, both from OMB, and thank them for presenting this afternoon. As always, any follow-up information, I ask that you provide this to Ms. Bass-Knight from City Council. And at this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. And that concludes the budget hearing for the Planning Department, Land Use Department. And with that, we're running actually almost on time. So if we could take a brief break and begin the real estate and housing at 6:05 p.m. Again, 6:05 p.m. Good evening, everyone. Honorable members of council, Chief of Staff Washington, department heads, and members of the public. At this time, I'd like to call to go order the Finance Committee budget hearing for the Department of Real Estate and Housing. I'd like to first start by recognizing members of the Council and Finance Committee here in attendance. Vice Chair Harley, 4th District.
Present.
Councilmember Oliver, 3rd District.
Present.
Council Member Field, 8th District.
Present.
At-large Councilmember Spadola. At-large Councilmember Walsh.
Here.
Council President Congo.
Here.
I'd also like to recognize any other council persons in attendance by doing a roll call. 1st District, Councilmember Gray.
Here.
Councilmember Darby, 2nd District. Councilmember Fields, 5th District. Councilmember McCoy, 6th District.
Here.
At-large Councilmember Cabrera. At-large Councilmember Mills. All right. I would like to inform everyone that public comments will be asked at the end of each budget hearing, and we look forward to participation from the public. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes. If there's any follow-up, as always, Ms. Marshall Bass-Knight will track and follow up on any requests. I ask that if my colleagues have any questions, please use the raise hand feature. At this time, I will turn it over to Mr. Willmeyer, who's from the Office of Management and Budget for a financial overview. Then we'll go into question and answer with Real Estate and Housing Director Bob Ware. Floor is yours, Mr. Willmeyer.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of City Council, during this time, we will review major funding changes within the proposed budget for fiscal year 2023 from the Real Estate and Housing Department. Next slide, please. Awesome. Thank you. Overall, the department's general fund budget decreased by nearly $1.7 million or 28.6%. Personal services decreased by slightly over $25,000 or 8.3%. MS&E, or material supplies and equipment, was essentially flat with a small increase of just over $10,500 or 0.6%. And 1/2 FTE was eliminated. Next slide, please. For the Cdbg Fund, the total budget decreased slightly more than $23,000 or 1.1%. Personal services went down approximately $33,000 or 4.5%. MS&E went up $10,000 or 7.3%. And similar to the general fund, 1/2 FTE was eliminated. Next slide, please. To highlight the major funding changes are the following. The equally split funded GIS Technician 1 position was eliminated, which decreased the general and Cdbg funds by slightly more than $33,500 each. For consultants in the general fund, an increase of just over $10,500 is largely due to an addition for GIS services. In the Cdbg fund, a $10,000 increase is for attorneys and consultants to assist staff with HUD regulations and rules. For debt service, there is an increase of nearly $1.7 million, mainly due to the $3.4 million loan for the Strategic Housing Fund, which is set to be paid off in this year, fiscal year 2022. For more information about the department's budget proposal, please see page 212 of the budget book. Of course, I am happy to take your questions before we hear from the department head, Director Weir.
And I have you being as present, Councilmember Mills. Do you have any question? Oh, okay. Looks like you're good. All right. All right. If there's no questions for OMB, I will. Councilmember Gray, do you have any questions specifically for OMB?
Specifically, could you discuss what the attorney's fees are being used for and why it isn't included in the law department? Or could you just explain that?
Sure. From an OMB perspective, and Director Weir might want to expound more on why it's sitting in the consultants fund, but these attorneys and consultants are they have specific knowledge with HUD regulations and rules. So that service is being put in the consultants fund. But Director Weir, if you wanted to add to that, that'd be great.
John, I think you answered correctly that currently we don't have anyone that has the expertise that we're needing with HUD regulations. And that represents a outside attorney. Actually, the attorney was previously a city attorney, but that person does not only the contracts that are necessary, but also works on our responses to HUD and as far as updating our regulations and those type of rules.
Thank you. May I follow up?
Yes, please.
I thought the mayor's office or administration was hiring an attorney for ARPA, which is also federal. And can that attorney be used for your purposes also? Are these two different consultants? I don't know if they're attorneys and consultants or they're combined, but I thought the city was hiring one for the ARPA funds. Is that different from the one that's your consultant?
Yes, that would be a different area of core competency. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, now, Director Weir, the floor is yours. Give a brief presentation, and then we'll dive into question and answer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Vice Chair and council members in attendance tonight. The Department of the Real Estate and Housing plans, allocates, and administers federal, state, and local resources for the benefit of persons of low and moderate income in the neighborhoods in which they live. We do that by improving the quality of life through housing. Generally speaking, increasing the supply of affordable housing, improving housing markets wherever possible, and existing housing stock, promoting self-sufficiency. When we talk about engaging in activities to stabilize and revitalize those neighborhoods, there's quite a few of those federal resources that come in that provide services to our citizens, and we manage and allocate those funds through our yearly federal grant process. Next slide, please. I am looking at our priorities, and I'm thinking that the primary priority is to increase the supply of affordable housing that's decent, safe, and sanitary, to engage in activities geared towards stabilization and revitalization of our neighborhoods, and increase homeownership opportunities through the city-sponsored initiative and cooperative efforts with the nonprofits and for-profit developers that are working in the city right now and will be working in the years to come. As far as our performance measures, next slide, please. Administer and fund housing programs to preserve existing occupied housing, increase the availability of affordable homeownership units, and support organizations that provide services to Wilmington's most needy residents. Next slide, please. So questions. I'm on number one, as far as discuss my vacant positions. How long, when we're going to fill them, and why are they necessary? Next slide, please. Thank you. As was mentioned earlier, John mentioned our GIS technician one. That position has been vacant since the first of the year, and we are not going to look for a replacement there for 2023. We are looking at outside consultants to do that, and also our internal mapping and graphics department to pick up a lot of all that load. Our senior program director resigned and has left as of the 1st of April. As far as that position is to be filled as soon as possible, it already has been posted. And the necessity of that position is that it's an integral position in the federal grant management process and procedure. So when we talk about what we do and how it's done, that position is integral into us moving forward in a way that doesn't create liability for the city. Question two is discuss the changes in positions and specify the mechanisms put in place to ensure the administrative cost overruns for the CDBG administrative caps are, as it pertains to staffing, do not create cost overruns. Next slide, please. So absolutely, as far as the GIS technician being eliminated, that is the change of position for the budget year. When we talk about preventing cost overruns to the general fund, of course, we don't control the MS&Es, but we are having monthly reconciliations in place with an external accountant, and you'll see that in our consultant line. And that will result in incorporating a more accurate budgeting. It is our goal to have a zero sum at the end of the budget year, so that our cost that we've said to the feds and our cost to the general fund are accurate and not overrun. Debt service.
Actually, Director Weir, I'm going to go a little bit out of order just so we can hit some major topics.
Sure. I'm following you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Questions. Can we go to question number 12, actually? Okay. This is a question regarding budgetary assistance available for affordable housing, homeowner repair, DLED, pre-rental inspections. This has been a mini both housing and urban committee meetings and city council meetings in general about the resources available to our citizens. So can you give an overview as to where we are right now and what the proposed funding for these programs are?
Well, this particular year is an odd year because the Congress has not passed a budget, and we have not received our grant allocation letter. Generally speaking, at this time of the year, we've already received that. So at this particular time, I can't tell the council or the administration what exactly will be our grants for the affordable housing and homeowner repair program. We are not anticipating that it would be much more or much less, but we do not know that number at this particular time. As far as the DLED, we are currently partnering with the Newcastle County Safe Homes and Reduction of Lead Hazard. That's a $1.3 million partnership. That is through a federal grant that we applied for, co-applied for with the county. The detail there is basically the county has some census tracts that are of lead hazard danger, but the city has many, many more. So what we did is we partnered with that application and spent a good part of my day today. They're ramping back up after the pandemic so they can go into houses and complete that. But I anticipate that the majority of the properties that will be remediated will be in the city. As far as pre-rental inspections, there's no money in the real estate and housing department's budget for pre-rental inspections. I think that's a L&I issue, to be frank with you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So in terms of these funds, again, it's depending upon what the federal government will grant for these funds, right?
Yes. I mean, there are, when we talk about, we cooperate and we work with other entities. So in my opening statement, I talked about those entities being the federal government, the state government, and absolutely as far as when we talk about DSHA, wherever we can cooperate and work together, we do that. But generally speaking, that those funds go directly to the homeowners and/or developers, and then we try to leverage and maximize their impact in the community.
Okay, this time I'd like to recognize Council Member Fields, and then I see Council Member Gray has her hand up. Floor is yours, ma'am. Council Member Gray.
Oh, thank you. I thought you said Field would go first. Thank you very much for acknowledgement. You said that we haven't received our grant funds yet from the feds. Does that include the CDBG funds?
For next year, yes.
Has the HUD department gotten back to you how they're resolving our violations? Have they responded to your request?
That is still in process. So Council member, that answer would be no, as far as that monitoring is still in process.
Okay, so how does that affect your budget if they refuse to take a decrease over the next 3 years of our CDBG funds, and you have to pay the money? How will that affect your budget?
Well, that will have to come out of the general fund budget. So as far as my particular department has very little general fund in it, we would have to, the administration, we'd have to work on that as far as if the request, if if we still would owe money back, and if they would not grant our request for a reduction over multiple years.
Do you have any idea when we will get that response from HUD?
We are still answering some of the findings, and they're allowing us to close the findings as we move forward. So, I would think that we would probably within the next 30 to 60 days be finished our work here, and then it would be in HUD's hands as far as the turnaround.
Okay, I understand the amount has decreased because we've explained some of the findings, but could I have a copy of the most recent correspondence, please, between you and HUD with the decrease in the other findings?
Sure. I think most of it is in email. It is not, there haven't been any formal management letters since the last time I responded to council during the committee meeting. So any of the back and forth right now would be emails.
So it's not public access?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to recognize Council Member Cabrera and then Council Member Walsh. I believe you're next. So we got Tia, is she having a tech issue?
I don't have my hand up, so it would be Councilman Walsh.
Yeah, Walsh. That's what I.
Oh, no, you said Cabrera.
I was recognizing her. No problem. The floor is yours.
On your DLED project, you said that the city has a lot of property still left to do. The city's been in this for what, 40 years now?
Well, as far as anything that was built after 1978 is a suspect of having lead paint in it.
Okay.
So, you think about, the age of our city, council member, if it was before, I'm sorry, I might have said after, I meant before. So as far as anything that was built before 78 is a suspect of lead paint. So you think about the age of our city, and there's a lot of parcels that are suspect.
Sure. And the city has been in the remediation business since close to 40 years, no?
I would imagine so. I know that over the years, there's been a change in the direction and from the federal government. When we talk about, there was at one point total remediation, and then there was interim remediation. So when you talk about the conditions of the lead paint, if it's not friable, if it's not flaking and coming up off, they're at this point they're saying, hey, just encapsulate it. So yeah, over those 40 years, there's been a lot of iterations of what there was money available for.
Okay, how many do you anticipate we have left to do? You said we have lots to do. We've had
Councilmember, I'm sorry, that would just be a guess from me, but when you talk about, again, any property that was built before 1978 would be a suspect.
I mean, do you think we still have close to 13% left or something like that, or even more?
I would guess that. And again, when you talk about the standards today of having solid paint surfaces, it's really driven out of the health testing, so that when you see a child with elevated lead blood levels, that really keys in the focus on where are they living, where are they spending their time, and the inspections of those particular locations.
Yes, I know that. All right, thank you.
All right, Director Ware, we can go back and to question 3. If there's anything you have to elaborate on with debt service or.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The debt service is resulting in a reduction of 1.68 million on the line. That was basically due to the 3.4 million that loan for the Housing Strategic Fund, and that is set to be paid off this year. So when you see that gigantic drop in the real estate and housing budget, that's the debt service, and paid off in 2022. That will not be involved in the budget going forward.
Okay. All right, and question 4, discuss the proposed plan for $500,000 to the land bank.
Yep.
And can you discuss the use of ARPA funds for the land bank?
Sure. Next slide, please. So the proposed $500,000 grant funds to the Wilmington Neighborhood Conservancy Land Bank really reflects the city's commitment that was made in 2017. And it's also very important to leverage additional funds. I think everyone can understand and appreciate the ask up for assistance and the fact that they can go and ask for assistance from a lot of entities. They can say solidly that the city is supporting their activities. When you look at the chart there have been a couple years that we have not contributed to the land bank. And at this point, we talk about the ARPA funds. There is 3.1 million that has been put under contract, and they've spent about 1 million of that so far, primarily on the east side, but there's also activities in West Center City and some in the Hilltop. So the grand total over the number of years from 2017 to with the proposed 2023 and the ARPA funds would be support of $6,549,000.
A quick question, Director Weir. Is there ever thought with the land bank to have meetings in the evenings? Because I've looked for my time being on council, the meetings are in the morning or the middle of the day when most people are working. I mean, I even have difficulty getting to the meetings myself because I'm usually in my other work meetings. So, has there been thought about that to engage the public more in the process? Maybe have switching off to some evenings, because I noticed 10 o'clock in the morning, most working people cannot attend those meetings.
Mr. Chair, actually this week there was discussion on, we struggled just like every other nonprofit organization struggles with participation for board members, especially the folks that are busy. And they're the people generally that you want on your board. So there was actually discussion about, is it evening? Is it late afternoon? It was even discussed on the weekends. So that is of note, and I will make sure that that continues to be a subject that is discussed at the land bank.
Okay, thank you so much. And just personally, because I've had that experience, seeing it to 9 a.m. That's usually, when I'm not able to make the meeting. So thank you so much for addressing that.
Yep.
Council Member Oliver, your hand was up first.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to echo what you just stated, because I've mentioned to you a couple of times that we discussed it about your absence at the various meetings and due to your schedule. So I just want to echo what Councilman Johnson stated, maybe rotating them in the future, one night at 5:30 when he's off work, because keep having him early in the morning in his absence, and I'm asking him questions. He's like, I didn't make it because of conflict in schedule, as you stated, Mr. Director Weir. It's not just with him, it's with various board members. So I think it's something to look at. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. Council Member Cabrera.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I did want to reiterate with the $500,000 for the land bank, how important that is, because right now we actually have a consultant who is fundraising for the land bank, and we are securing monies from the state as well as from the county. And now we're actively going after corporate partners to contribute. And it is important when they ask us where the current contributions are coming from, that since the people who are benefiting from the work of the land bank is primarily the city of Wilmington. It is just the city of Wilmington. And we are looking at some of the neighborhoods that have been neglected for far too long. As mentioned, the east side, a lot of funding is going to the east side, and thanks to ARPA that we have this opportunity to do that, some of it to the Hilltop. But if we look around our city, we can see that there are areas that could use help and that the land bank is buying those properties. At our board meeting yesterday, as an example, one of the properties that was finally bought was a 4-unit property. And I don't know, Director Weir, maybe you could remember the address, but my understanding that has been a scene where there has been many, many shootings and many fatalities because that property has been vacant for so long. It was in bad shape. Somebody bought it up and they have the funding secured to fix it up. So I think we're going to start seeing a transformation of our city. And I know that we are very concerned with crime and the shootings. But again, one common thread is that there's usually a vacant property somewhere in the proximity of where a shooting has taken place. So this $500,000 is very important, that we don't touch it, that we don't take it out. We did commit to $1.5 million when the contract was originally written, and we have never given the land bank the $1.5 million yearly per the agreement. So that's just something I wanted to bring forth. And as for the meetings, I would say, Mr. Chair, Councilman Johnson, you could always have a surrogate go in your place as well, but I do concur that maybe we should rotate and have some meetings in the evening so that we can have more engagement from other council members as well as the public. But please, you can assign someone to come in your place as well, you and the president. Thank you. That is all.
Very much, Councilmember Vice Chair Harley.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just, Councilmember Cabrera just answered the question that I was going to ask. I will be more than happy to go in as your designate until they decide on a different schedule. And the second question I was going to ask was, in the legislation, was there a designated amount that the city would commit? So based on what Councilmember Cabrera just said, there is, I guess, that $1.7 million. If that's accurate, then she answered my question, because again, you know, looking at this grid here, 2018, 19, and 2020, there were no funds. And I guess there was a good reason as to why the funds were not granted. But yeah, there is definitely a lot of movement going on with the land bank. I know 2 of the properties I think that Councilmember Cabrera could be talking about is on 23rd and Pine. The 2 apartments, 38 and 39, that's the address, which I know for many years was blighted and dilapidated. But anyway, I definitely see the good work that is coming out of the land bank. And apparently these funds are for operational costs, I would think. Is that correct?
Yes, council member, that is correct. As far as that is keeping the doors open and the lights on. When you talk about taking these properties into an inventory, they have a pretty heavy burden as far as maintenance, given that they have been abandoned and vacant for so long. And, you know, they also are targets for, you know, illegal dumping and all kinds of stuff. So, you know, that would take care of that administrative cost and the staffing.
Okay, so do you, Director Weir, do you get some kind of report that shows the balance for the land bank in terms of whatever their balances are? Like, is there anything that you get like that?
Well, these funds are based on reimbursables. So this is not a situation where we give them $500,000 and say, you know, tell us about what you do with it. We actually, on a monthly basis, ask them exactly what their activities are, and they have the paperwork that backs it up, and then we reimburse them.
Okay, and my last question is this. When we originally committed to the $1.7 million, I think it was.
1.5 a year?
1.5, right, yeah. So when you look at that number, at that point in time, I guess my only question and point I'm making is that, you know, what is that trend there? Is the trend based on, it has to be based on something to either be increased or decreased or stay the same. And that's my point, you know, how do you come up with that amount? And is that a number that could, you know, move, scale up or scale down?
Well, I think that the work that the land bank is doing is important work. I think that when you talk about what the city can do, obviously at one point they felt they could do 1.5 a year for 10 years. We're getting back on track into that, but we're also looking at leveraging. I think Council Member Cabrera said it well, in that, you know, that 500,000 is certainly a meaningful contribution by the city to the land bank. But I think the bigger piece is that it says that we are committed and we are working towards that original commitment. When you look at the years of 18, 19, and 20, that's a hard story to tell to anybody that is contributing versus now, at least we're moving in the right direction and getting back on track.
Thank you. And I do support, them getting the money. And I do think that they're moving forward in a positive direction. And I do think that they're doing a great job, especially the two that keep, I know of Ray and Nicole, the female, what's her name?
Natalie.
Natalie. I know it started with an N. Yeah, so I think they're doing a good job. So I just wanted to ask those questions because I know it's been some years now since it was first implemented, and I just wanted to make sure that I knew where the monies were going, and you answered my question in terms of the operations and keeping it going. So thank you.
Very well.
All right. And Director, we're aware there was another part about eminent domain. Do you have any insight onto how that could impact the budget?
Well, at this point, we are looking at eminent domain powers for just vacant and abandoned property. And when we talk about eminent domain, that does not mean that we would be just going in and tearing buildings down. That means that you would actually have to pay a market value for them. I know that's one of the concepts when you talk about eminent domain and housing rights. Folks often want to take eminent domain and make it into a monster. When you take a property through eminent domain, you've worked a lot of hours on getting to a market value for the property. And as of right now, any acquisition costs that they'd be absorbed from our current budget. We have 2 lines right now that we would be able to use. And of course, when we talk about the number of properties that fall into this, a lot of times with eminent domain, if you look around the country, the threat of using eminent domain is really the most effective use of eminent domain. There's very few municipalities that actually end up in court fighting with an owner of a property because the way that it's set up, if you have multiple appraisals, you know what the property's value is, and that's where the owner wants to fight it. But you're talking about the minimum of 2 appraisals and a third appraiser reviewing those appraisals. So when we talk about what it would cost us, yeah, eminent domain will cost the city when we pick up properties. But right now in this 2023 budget, we are feeling that the acquisitions cost would be absorbed from the current budget.
Gotcha. Move on to question number 5 about the neighborhood clean teams. I noticed the budget is flat from the previous year. So is there any changes to that program or coverage areas, or is it still the same as last year?
Well, the coverage areas are the same as last year, and they were modified last year. I'd like to share with the committee that it's not a stagnant. This is not a situation where if it goes to X Street, that if the crew is out there and they see that the next block down has trash, that they don't go down and pick it up or sweep it up. So it is a robust application on the street. As far as when we talk about the activities, covering the west side, the east side, the north side, there is a lot of good work being done out there, and the nonprofits that are running those programs are really doing good work. If the next slide actually has a breakdown. So the questions being as far as it's flat from last year, basically any changes would be determined based on deployment of the organizations. We get regular, and it's the same situation as far as we get regular reports from those folks. And a lot of those leaders in those organizations come back and say, we're on this street, but we really think we need to go 2 over, or we really need to extend out or and subtract here. So we get a lot of feedback from the on the street eyes. And I think that when we talk about including additional coverage areas, we're exploring on a case-by-case basis how we can do better constantly. So, when you talk about that, we're certainly open to and welcoming feedback from council members
And
effectiveness.
And Director Ware, I would say definitely as far as the west side, I've heard nothing but glowing praise, especially from store owners in the commercial corridor off Lincoln Street. It's a very high volume trash area, and there's still always trash, but it definitely has improved. So again, thank you so much to the team that was working out there during the pandemic. That they were frontline warriors. So great job. Thank you.
I think next slide. I don't know if I missed. There we go.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Councilmember Oliver, you had something on clean teams?
Yes, I just wanted to reiterate regarding the east side. It is very visible of the good work that the team, clean team is doing. When I ride through the city through the evening, even just right around the city period, and on the north side is very visible of the work that they're doing. When you come through the corridors such as 11th Street, coming over Our Plant Bridge, riding down Market Street. I mean, just throughout the city, it is a big difference with the trash reduction when you're riding through the main streets and some of the smaller streets. So I really appreciate the work that they're doing. So I just wanted to let that be known. Thank you.
All right, and he moved to question number 6, Director Ware. Council Member Fields, your comment.
Yes, I'd just like to say, well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to say for the clean team there, they are really doing a good job over here in the 5th district, and I'm glad that this program is still being funded. So I just want to let them know that they're doing good, and please continue to fund this program. Thank you.
And Councilmember Gray.
Thank you. I would just like to say this is probably the 15th time I've asked for clean street in the 1st district, and we do not have it. So this is another request, another year, another 6 months to ask that we get some clean street support in the 1st district. Thank you.
All right. Moving along to question 6 about, can you discuss the Live Near Your Work program, Director Ware? Is there any changes, any thoughts about how the program can be increased?
This particular program is a employee assistance program without income limits. So when we talk about a return on investments to the city, I believe it's an incentive for new hires. And in this current marketplace, that is a challenge. And I think it's also a tool for retaining current employees. When I look at the folks that are involved in the program, we have a process where they have to go to housing counseling, and then they come in once they've completed that and they reserve money. Now, we have a lot of people that have reserved money, but they have not found that their dream house. So when we look at the numbers over the last 2 years, 14 city employees have participated in the program. The idea that we know we have a lot of potentially new hires when we look at the vacancies that the city has right now. And once again, I think that it's really a important tool for recruitment and retention. And I think that when you talk about that $4,000, that is, we do give them a 1099, but that is basically a gift when we talk about buying a home. And we all know that that right now is a challenge.
Okay. Councilmember Oliver, a question?
No, once again, I'd just like to thank Director Weir for the outstanding work that real estate and housing is doing. They have some excellent programs up there, and this is definitely one of them. And I do know someone who has taken advantage of it. So thanks again. Bye.
All right. Vice Chair Harley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I heard Director Weir say reserve. There have been individuals that reserved but haven't taken advantage of it. What does that mean?
Well, it's subject to availability of funds. So when someone completes their housing counseling successfully, they can come in and apply for those funds. There's a process where the director of HR has to sign off. I have to sign off, but that basically gives them 6 months to look for a home. If they get to the 6-month period, they can come back in and re-up for another 6 months. What we don't want to have happen is we don't want to have folks that are reserving $4,000 and then not purchasing homes. So that's basically a process that there's a timeline to it. It expires. They have to come back to us and reapply. There's generally not a problem with that, but just so that it's very clear that there is some tension to this and it is subject to availability of funds.
Thank you. And my second question is this. So are there funds available right now?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so it's not a problem as long as there are funds available. I could see that being a problem. Somebody reserving it, you run out of money and there's somebody lined up that could use it.
Yep. Well, we do during new employee orientation, we do a presentation to every class as far as the availability of this assistance.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Gray.
Thank you. The down payment settlement assistance program that was just recently passed as an ordinance, will that start July 1? I have people contacting me knowing how to apply.
Well, we certainly would like to start it before July 1. The fact of us not getting our grant numbers yet and not having a budget passed. But yeah, I would anticipate July 1st would be fine. If you have anyone that is interested, they can certainly call the Real Estate and Housing Department, and we will make sure that they are aware of all the updates.
Okay, thank you. But is the first one to go to a counselor? Is that the first step? That the buyer has to go to a counselor to get, that's the first step?
Well, the first step is that they have to decide they want to buy, they want to be a homeowner. But yes, absolutely, passing through a HUD certified housing counselor is the first step.
Thank you. That's all.
Mr. Chair, could you ask everyone to mute their phone or turn the TV down?
Yes, everyone. Again, please be mindful of background noise as well. Thank you very much. All right, Director, we're moving right along to question 7, just the budget for the demos. I believe in the land use presentation, we had some discussion about it from that side. So from your side, are there any comments or any input you have on that plan?
Well, I think that it was mentioned earlier that right now the average for a demolition of a single family home is $50,000. When we talk about stabilization, that stabilization is really about putting a roof on properties, because when we get properties that have been abandoned, generally speaking, they're leaking into themselves and leaking into the properties next door to them. Which, you know, oftentimes are homeowners. So it's very important, I think, for us to stabilize those properties. When we look at the availability of federal funds versus non-federal funds, this represents money that can be used citywide to support neighborhood stabilization activities. So we feel that you know, I heard the question asked, you know, is it enough? It's never enough. But I think that we can manage cleverly. I don't think there's ever any money left in that line, at least since I've been here at the end of the year. So I think this is a important tool. This is, you know, I often joke about it that, you know, you show me a bad house and I'm going to show you a bad tree on the piece of property that's, you know, hanging over a neighbor's property, things like that. I think it's important that when the city's involved in a property that we're good neighbors, and this budget line represents the ability to do that.
All right, Director Ware, thank you very much. And we are running a little short on time. So I want to question 8, 9, and 10. The answers will be on the City Council budget website, okay? And I wanted to hit on question 11 regarding federal grant funds. I know you touched on it briefly this evening, but I wanted to delve in a little bit on the 3.7, you know, $3.7 million, and what's the plan used, and how do you specify what entities will receive these grants?
Well, we are anticipating that release of the grant letter before the end of this month. Once that's received, we have already went through a public comment period, a public request for proposals. We've had a committee that there was a representative of the City Council on that did scoring. but we don't know what the number is, so we stopped. Once those details are present, what we need to do is we need to go back to the Community Development and Urban Planning Committee and present those, and that's part of our public comment period. It needs to be reviewed by that committee, and then the final award amounts will be approved by City Council. So although it's disjointed this year, generally we talk about it at our general fund budget. But we also historically go to the Community Development and Urban Planning Committee. So, unfortunately, I really don't have any information because we haven't gotten the grant award. But once that's received, it will be before the public, before the Community Development Urban Planning Committee, and then finally going to full council to be approved.
Thank you very much, Director. Vice Chair Harley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Weir, I realize that we have not received the money, but when you decide on the organizations that you're going to grant these funds to, is there a place where we can actually see what organizations that are receiving those funds once you receive them, and then once decisions are made to give those funds out, the HUD funds?
Absolutely, yes. As far as each application was scored by a committee. That committee had city staff, had a representative from City Council, had members of the public. They scored them, and as far as part of the presentation to the committee and to council as a whole will be those organizations that we're recommending funding to. When we talk about those organizations, yes, there's going to be some housing involved in it, but when you talk about, say for instance, the opportunity for housing opportunities for persons with AIDS and emergency solution shelter grant, that's about prevention of homeless or services for folks that are homeless. So, when we look at it, I know a lot of times with real estate and housing, we talk about housing, but that budget will have a large amount of youth and family services, specific services for folks that are being provided in the city, and that will all be part of the presentation that has to be approved through the public process.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question is this: when the funds for the first-time homeowners is available, do you plan to send out a communication? How is the community supposed to know when the funds will be available? I've been asked that question several times.
Sure. Well, one, we have been working with the housing counseling agencies that are qualified, the HUD qualified. We've been working with the Mortgage Banker Association, and we've been working with the realtors. So we've had meetings with all those groups to get their feedback on how the program could work best in getting the money out into the street. And I would anticipate as soon as we get ready to do that, there would be, I see a joint announcement from the administration and council to say, hey, this program is up and running. I would love to see that money just run out the door.
Awesome. You answered my question, because I've been directing individuals to the first-time home owners programs, the different agencies that are offering the program. That's the first step. And I've been telling them that the monies could possibly be available, I guess, in the third quarter. Is that accurate?
I would certainly hope so, yes.
Okay, but they definitely have to go to a program first. They have to be qualified through a program first to qualify for the funding.
Correct. And we've, as I said, we've had meetings with the housing counseling organization staff. So I don't think there'll be anybody that you would walk into there and they would not know that the city is getting ready to launch a assistance program.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. And moving right along, I believe question 12 I already touched on. Just the question 13, just regarding any assistance for the Wilmington Housing Partnership. Is there any assistance?
No, there's no financial assistance in this budget, although we still do in-kind staffing because there are some still business issues that need to be dealt with. I would suspect that the Wilmington Housing Partnership during this 2023 budget year, there'll be some decisions made and movement made with that organization.
Okay. And the organizational chart, of course, is there for everyone to view. Then lastly, I imagine your question about your answer about the 2% reduction. Do you have any suggestions at this time about ways we could trim, or is there going to have some further talks?
Well, given that this department has so little general fund in it, we've already, I don't want to say we've made our contribution, but as far as we did make that quality and quantitative analysis when we talked about the GIS technician, that particular one was pretty easy in as much that most people that have GIS skills that we're looking for are looking for a lot more money than what we're offering. And we talked to a couple agencies that said, oh yeah, we can work with you, so that, we basically have a savings of $33,527 from the general fund, and we're only increasing our consultant fees by $10,000. So, we're trying to be as clever as we can, but we still, as was mentioned earlier by the chief of staff, we need to make decisions in light of delivering services and being, efficient about what we do.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Director Weir. Now I'm going to turn to the public, members of the public, if there's any comments or questions. Going once, going twice. All right. I'm going to kick it back to members of council for any final comments or questions for Director Weir. Vice Chair Harley.
Yes, I just wanted to commend and compliment Director Weir for whenever I contact him regarding any of my constituents with an issue. Not only does he support and help them, he does it in a very expeditious manner. So I just wanted to publicly thank him for just responding and being supportive. And I also meant to say that regarding Commissioner Starkey as well. I've had a number of situations to take place that I really didn't know what to do. And when I reached out to Director Weir and Commissioner Starkey, they always respond and they always meet the challenge. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Oliver, final comments and questions. Councilmember Oliver.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I want to thank Director Weir for the outstanding job that he does, Jeff Starkey, and also Britt Taylor. But Councilman Chris Johnson and Marcia, I'd like to thank you both for the great job you've done tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, council member. And I would like to thank as well the Director Weir, Mr. Wilmeyer from OMB for presenting this evening. Any follow-up information, again, will be provided by Ms. Marshall Bassline from City Council. And she is helping us direct this show. So thank you again, and also to WIT and staff. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. All right. Well, the real estate housing budget hearing has concluded. We are running almost right on schedule. So there's going to be a little bit of a change up. Vice Chair Harley will actually be chairing the L&I meeting, and that will begin at 7:10 p.m. Thank you, everyone. Good evening, honorable members of council, Chief of Staff Washington, department heads, and members of the public. At this time, I'd like to call to order the Finance Committee budget hearing for the Department of License and Inspection. I would like to first start by recognizing members of the Finance Committee that are in attendance by doing a roll call. Vice Chair Harley.
Present.
Councilmember Oliver, 3rd District.
Present.
Councilmember Field, 8th District. At-large Councilmember Spadola.
Present.
At-large Councilmember Walsh.
Here.
Council President Congo.
Here.
This time, I'd also like to recognize other council persons in attendance by doing a roll call. Councilmember Gray, 1st District.
Present.
Councilmember Darby, 2nd District. Councilmember Fields, 5th District.
Present.
Councilmember McCoy, 6th District. Councilmember Cabrera at large.
I'm present.
Councilmember Mills at large.
Present.
I'd like to also inform everyone that public comments will be asked at the end of this budget hearing, and we look forward to participation from the public. As always, public comment will be 3 minutes. If there's any follow-up information addressed during public comment, Ms. Marshall Bass-Knight will track and follow up on those requests. As if my colleagues have any questions, please use the raise hand feature. We'll then now turn it over to Mr. Hayford, OMB Fiscal Analyst, for financial overview. Then it will be followed by an introduction and question and answer by Deputy Commissioner Boykin. This time, I would like to hand it over to Mr. Hayford, and Vice Chair Harley also will be taking over as chair of the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Good evening, Chairman Johnson, President Kungu, and honorable members of City Council. I would like to present the Department of Licenses and Inspections, also known as L&I, FY2023 proposed budget request on behalf of the Office of Management and Budget. As discussed in the previous meeting, the Department of Planning and Development has become the Department of Land Use and Planning. It was reorganized by transferring in those processes, employees, and budget accounts from the Department of L&I related to permitting, plan reviews, and land development. The L&I department is requesting a total budget of about $3.7 million in FY2023. This total request represents a decrease of about $2 million, or 35%. Funding for the department is derived solely from the general fund. Next slide. The major funding changes for FY2023 are the result of transferring 12 accounts of $1.92 million to the land use and planning. 14 positions were transferred to the land use and planning at a cost of $1.4 million. Also not related to transfers is the deletion of a deputy commissioner for a savings of $127,000. MS&E decreased by $574,000, of which $526,000 was transferred out to the Land Use and Planning Department. Some of the larger accounts that were transferred include demolition, $350,000, consultants, $120,000, and temporary agencies, $15,000. Independent of transfers to land use and planning, the contractual amount the city pays to the Delaware Office of Animal Welfare for animal control services increased 2.5% to $270,000. This concludes my presentation, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
I don't see any hands, so I would say proceed, Mr. Hayford.
No, this is Deputy Commissioner Michael Boykin. Good evening,
Okay.
Madam Chair and council persons. I'll be presenting for the Department of License and Inspection this evening. As far as the vision statement for the Department of License and Inspection strives to promote and protect a safe living and working environment for all citizens of the city of Wilmington. This is achieved by the implementation of fair and unbiased application of the Wilmington City Codes. Our goal is to facilitate voluntary compliance by working in partnership with our constituents. Together, we can successfully achieve a prosperous future for our city. Next slide. Our departmental priorities. We looking to ensure that we're responding to citizen complaints and concerns within 48 hours. We strive to resolve issues and violations within a timely manner, work to identify new and unregistered rental properties, increase the number of rental inspections, and increase enforcement of vacant and blighted properties. Next slide, please. How our performance measures are going to be is responding within 48 hours to those complaints received by the department, provide a minimum of 90 days prior to criminal or civil enforcement actions. We want to notify new owners of investment properties within 90 days of purchase regarding rental licenses and inspections requirements. We are targeting to conduct 500 rental inspections, also a 90-day review of vacant and blighted properties for additional actions to be taken by the department. Next slide.
Before we go to questions, let me just find out if there are any questions by any of our council members. Council Member Spadola.
Thank you. I'm curious why the number 500 when it comes to rental inspections. I mean, can you just elaborate why the number 500?
We want something that's manageable, Councilman. Because of COVID, we had a big delay in what rental inspections we could get completed within a year. 2 years ago, we were able to reach 1,700 within that year by doing targeted rentals inspections. So I was trying to find something reasonable because we're just picking up from the COVID backlog, and we have an issue of getting into properties. Unfortunately, due to COVID, there's a lot of tenants would not let us in. A lot of the property owners aren't available because of certain issues surrounding COVID. So I was trying to find a reasonable number that we can meet.
Sure, I guess I approach that more from, I mean, if the tenant doesn't want you in, the property owner doesn't want you in, who are you helping by inspecting a property that nobody wants inspected?
Well, we have a requirement to do those inspections.
And what is that requirement?
The rental inspections, they're rental inspections that we're trying to complete. There's a requirement.
Okay, I mean, I think I don't know if that's entirely necessary if a tenant is asking for it. If that's a code thing, that's something I'll look into.
No, this is just part of ensuring that the rental properties are to code and we provide a safe living environment for those tenants.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Spadola. Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to piggyback on what he just said, Councilmember Spadola. So if they don't let you in and the landlord can't be contacted, but you do the rental inspection anyway, what do you do?
Well, if we're able to get in, I apologize, ma'am. Yes, we do it. If the tenant does allow us in, they have legal access to the property. So we would go ahead and do the rental inspection and issue, right. If there's any violations, we would issue the violations to the property owner.
So if they don't let you in, do you do an outside inspection?
Well, yes, we always do exterior inspections anyway, but the goal is to get into the rental properties to ensure that they're up to code is what our target is. We want to get inside the property, but yes, we continue to do the exteriors without any assistance from either the property owner or tenant because we can visually see those.
I guess I was a little confused because the director on the first half of the new department said that not much had changed, even in spite of the pandemic, in L&I.
Well, I can't speak to what he was speaking about, but there's a lot of things that did change as far as interior inspections, where again, for rental inspections, if the tenant and or property owners say no due to COVID concerns, of course, we could not proceed. But if the tenant said yes, then we would be able to proceed with our inspections. And of course, we do provide the protection equipment for our inspectors in order for them to be protected while they're inside the properties.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Wash. Councilmember Gray?
Thank you. I was just addressing the concern that if L&I can't get into the property because of either the tenant or the owner, we still have an obligation to try to find out if people are living in safe conditions. So to address Councilman Spadola, even if people aren't letting us in, I think that we're trying to make sure that our constituents are living in safe environments, that there aren't any gross grievances with the apartments, like no water, no light, no heat. People do live in those conditions, and those are the main ones that probably do not want us into their residence. So I think we do need to make the effort to get into residences, even if we're refused by owners and by the tenants. Thank you.
Well, I think there's constitutional issues.
Hold on. Councilmember Gray, were you finished?
Yes, I am. I was just bringing up the point of why we should persist even when no one is willing to let us in. I think the question was, why are we doing this if the landlord nor the tenant wants us in the home? And I said, it's for the health of our community, our housing stock, and our constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gray. Councilmember Spadola?
Thank you. Yeah, just to respond, I mean, I understand the feel-good nature of what you were saying, but at some point, it's, the government's just acting like Big Brother. The tenant, at the end of the day, it just comes down to personal responsibility. The tenant is the one who could be doing the inspection, and if it's unsafe, they try to find other housing. Because if you take it to the extent, if L&I does inspect and there's problems, what do they tell the renter? You can't live here, and then they're out on the street. So I think we're off base here, but thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Spadola. I don't think there are any other hands. So Mr. Boykin, you can proceed.
Well, the question one is with the anticipated operational efficiencies with renaming or revamping the Department of Planning and Deployment to the Department of Land Use and Planning as established per the code, with the resultant shifting of the land use functions such as permitting, plan review, and land deployment development from L&I to the reorganized department. What would L&I look like, and share additional cost savings and relies as a result of the change? Share a chart describing the major functions of the department, and with the changes, what impact the staffing is there. Next slide, please. As a result of the reorganization, Commissioner Starkey did share with the panel during his hearing that it would streamline the permit process, because all the folks who are responsible for signing off on any specific permit will be under one department, and there's one person that has established the head of it, and they will be more efficient in what they do as far as getting the sign-offs from the various departments within the land use department. That would leave the Department of License Inspection to concentrate on houses, buildings, structures, rental properties, and exteriors. As far as the personnel moves to the Department of Land Use and Planning, their move as far as the cost for those employees and the ancillary costs will move to the Department of Land Use and Planning, and the L&I budget will be reduced by those moves. However, it would not create any savings within the department. With those moves and the functions being moved, the Department of License Inspection would then concentrate on enforcement. That enforcement would include complaints, tenant complaints, vacant and blighted properties, exterior violations, rentals, and sanitation issues. There would be no layoffs or loss of employees within the Department of License Inspection with the reorganization. Next slide. Discuss the current vacancy. Next slide. Currently, we have one vacant position, housing code enforcement officer position. The person retired back in December 2021. We did post a position, and we're now on a second posting because we had to repost it of the sparse applications that received for that position. And we're looking to try to attract, qualified personnel for it. We're looking to fill this position as soon as possible, and it's just for the effectiveness of doing business of the department for that position to be filled.
Looks like Councilmember Gray has a question. Is it on question 2 or the previous slide?
I really don't know. I'm wondering, where are zone violations falling? Did I miss that? Is that with the new department, or is that still under L&I?
Zoning would move to the new land use department.
Okay, any violation of zoning is the new land department.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for asking that question, Councilmember Gray. I was thinking the same thing. I don't recall seeing a slide explaining zoning and where zoning fits in with this new reorganization, but maybe that's on the end, on the organizational chart, Mr. Boykin.
Not for myself, but it should be in the land use chart.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, hold on one second. So what we can do is refer to that particular PowerPoint to look at the organization to look for zoning. Yes, for under land use, that's the question.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, all right, thank you. Councilmember Oliver, you have a question?
No, I was just going to say that was on the previous, when they discussed it on land use, maybe it was oversight. Y'all didn't see it. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. You can proceed, Mr. Boykin.
Next slide, please. It says discuss the proposed changes to the positions within the department. Next slide. There'd be the elimination of the deputy commissioner position, and there would be no layoffs within the department. Next slide.
Excuse me, Mr. Boykin, can we go back to the question? We're going through them pretty fast. Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Discuss any proposed changes to positions, new positions, leader position, upgrades, downgrades, title change, salary changes, appeals, etc.
Thank you.
As I stated, the deputy commissioner position will be eliminated within the department license inspection, and there will be no layoffs. Discuss $130,000 budget for property maintenance pertaining to neglected properties, specified amounts of funds recouped, if any, for the last 3 years, specify any budgetary plans if there is a consideration for condemnation legislation regarding vacant homes and eminent domain. Next slide, please.
Hold on, Councilmember Gray, is your hand up from the last question, or you have any question?
Yes. If the deputy director's position, did he retire? Is he deceased? Did he get another title? If there are no layoffs, what happened to that individual?
He got promoted.
And what is his title now?
It'll be deputy commissioner to commissioner of the Department of License and Inspection.
But that's a deputy commissioner. What's the, well, I'm a little confused here. I don't have a problem. I'm just a little confused.
The deputy commissioner position will be eliminated, and it will just be a commissioner license and inspection.
So there'll be 2 commissioners or license inspection?
No, the deputy commissioner is eliminated.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gray.
Well, I think maybe to answer a question, the councilwoman's question, and again, I'm not sure if it's appropriate, but Commissioner Starkey would then move over to the director of the land use department, and I will be receiving a promotion to commissioner of license and inspection.
I thought it was your position. Thank you.
Okay, the cost, $130,000 cost for property maintenance is to cover mitigating issues of vacant properties or locations not addressed by the property owners. Fees collected within the last 3 years were $83,840. The department will work with the administration on any actions governing any legislative changes. Discuss the 269,000 allotment for animal control, provide the number of animals retrieved compared with the same time last year. Next slide. The formula for animal control is.
Mr. Boykin, hold on.
I'm sorry.
We have a question. Ms. Bass-Knight?
Yeah, Mr. Boykin, I just want to point out for question number 4, just for the viewers, for item B regarding the legislation regarding the vacant homes and eminent domain. I just wanted to make sure that it, did it impact your department differently than, it did with land use? I mean, I'm not sure, but what's the purpose of that question?
Well, I won't know until after.
Yeah, it didn't impact it, Ms. Bass-Knight, because there's not been any legislation that's been actually approved to allow eminent domain. So until such time, there's not been any allocation in the budget to reflect that.
As I was stating, the formula. I'm sorry.
Oh, can everyone please raise their hand? Does someone else have something to say? Councilmember Oliver?
Now I heard Chief of Staff, Ms. Washington said something to Marshall, but I didn't know if Marshall was on mute because I never heard her respond and say thank you. And so we just kept going. I heard Marshall ask the question. I heard my answer, but I never heard Marshall say anything else. I'm sorry.
Councilmember Walsh?
I had a question to piggyback on one that was asked earlier, and that was, so you were saying the deputy commissioner was eliminated and that became a commissioner. Is that correct?
Yes, so the deputy commissioner is being proposed to be eliminated, and there will be just the commissioner of license and inspection, correct?
But then that was an increase.
No, the position was eliminated, and essentially what happened with the commissioner, his position moved over to land use. And Mr. Boykin's deputy, he was formerly the deputy, he will move into the commissioner of L&I position.
Oh, so that one was an increase.
And not so much an increase, it's just that we just eliminated the deputy out of L&I and just put Mr. Boykin.
Well, does he make more money than he did before?
Oh, you're talking about a financial increase?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, he's a director now, commissioner. It's not at the level that it was not at the level that it was last year.
Okay.
Okay.
I think we would all do a little bit better too if it was slowed down a little.
Agreed. Thank you, Councilmember Walsh. You're welcome. Councilmember Fields?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a question, and I think I missed what the Chief of Staff was saying about the Commissioner of Land Use and the Commissioner of License and Inspection. Is that one job or is that two? Like, is Mr. Starkey still, is Commissioner Starkey still the commissioner?
He will not be the Commissioner of License and Inspection any longer. He will be the Director of the Land Use Department. And Mr. Boykin will move into the Commissioner of L&I position.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Member Fields. Councilmember Oliver, is your hand still up?
Yes, so I just want to make it clear because I agree we're just moving kind of fast. So that was my question. So Commissioner Starkey and Commissioner Boykin both have received an increase for their new positions. I just wanted to confirm that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, if there are no more council members' hands up, we can move forward, and we're asking that you.
I'm sorry if I may, if I can clarify something. I'm sorry, I don't want to belabor.
Sure.
So Commissioner Starkey did not receive an increase. And because we changed Mr. Boykin to the commissioner, he received a slight increase because he's now the commissioner of a whole department. So I just wanted to make that clarification.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Boykin, the floor is yours.
May I follow up?
Quick.
Go ahead, Councilmember Oliver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Jeff has merged with two departments and he doesn't get an increase. And Commissioner, okay, that's weird, but go ahead.
Thank you.
Like he should get an increase also. Looks like he's taking on more duties.
Duly noted. Thanks. Mr. Boykin?
The 269,000 is a formula used by the state as far as the jurisdictions have to pay, and the city's cost is that 269. Next slide. They are behind in a year. They have not posted the 2021 data, but this is the data for the previous 2 years as far as the animals that they dealt with within the city limits.
So Mr. Boykin, I have a question. So why haven't they provided the data for 2021?
I can't answer that, ma'am. We get the numbers from their website.
Oh, okay, they're not posted. The numbers are not posted. Okay, it's not a request that we send to them to get the information. We go out on their website and whatever's out there is what we use.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Council Chair.
Oh, yes, Council Member Wash.
Thank you. What is the number we pay them again?
269,000.
So for $269,000, we go on their website to get information. Aren't they a state agency? Which means they're answerable to somebody along the line?
Yes, I'm pretty sure I'm sorry, Chairman Harley, is it okay?
Yes.
Yes. I'm pretty sure they provide reports to us, but this is information that we acquired online, but we surely can get further, data if you desire it. It's not a problem.
Yeah, I think that's a Councilmember Walsh. I'll let you, do you have a follow-up?
Thank you. Yes, I kind of do. If we can keep track of a $40 ticket, we can certainly keep track of a $260,000 payment we're making, and have it in a timely manner too, because now we're what, in April already. Mm-hmm. So they owe us for a whole year and they owe us for a quarter too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, I'm thinking if we're budgeting monies for them, we definitely should know what the numbers are, and I think we could be a little more proactive in finding out what those numbers are to make sure that we're in the right ballpark, or maybe we're not. I mean, without the data, I would think it's hard to budget, but I think it's important that we get that data.
Chairman Harley, as the Deputy Commissioner mentioned earlier, this is the amount that we pay them is based on a formula. And all cities they pay the state based on a formula. I think it has some, I don't know if it has anything to do with population, but it's actually a flat formula. And that's how they come up with the payment for the city.
Okay. It's a flat formula.
Yes.
Okay.
Excuse me, Chairman. Chairwoman.
Yes, go ahead, Councilwoman Walsh.
I fully understand that because we signed that contract. These are numbers on how many animals they picked up or how many animals they did.
Mm-hmm.
So this kind of tells us if that formula needs to be changed or if it needs well, be lowered or higher.
Correct.
And so I think they're like two separate issues, quite frankly. It's money that we signed to pay. We said this is how much we think is fair. And yeah, we did that.
Right.
But this is how many animals we have. And now we don't know for a year and a quarter how many animals they've taken. I think it would be at their fingertips.
Agreed.
So why don't we just assign somebody to say, hey, you need to get a hold of them in person once a month. You know, I mean, it doesn't take rocket scientists to find out something like this.
Right. I agree. I think, or at least at the end of the year, especially if this is budgeted out yearly, I mean, at least we can make a call if we don't see the data on the website. We can pick up the phone and give them a call.
Sure.
Yep. All right. Council Member Oliver and then Council Member Gray.
Now, I just would like to ask Marshall last night for someone from our staff to, I guess, coordinate with the mayor's office so we can get them stats. I have to totally agree with Councilman Walsh. That makes no sense. And I am a pet peeve on these animals because I just see the numbers. I mean, what are they, raccoons? Are they possums, cats, dogs, etc.? But whatever it is, I think the money that we're giving them, someone should have that, have that number up on the slide. So hopefully we can follow up and we can get this, get them numbers before this budget hearing is over this year. Thank you.
Thank you. So the numbers with the detail, if we could get the numbers with the detail.
Yeah, that's like she said, that shouldn't be hard to get. Thank you.
Right, exactly.
Thank
you. You're welcome. Councilmember Gray.
Thank you. I'm very happy that we're recognizing or looking at this contract because I had discussed it last year and they even came in and made a presentation. They do not pick up wild animals, so there's no raccoons or rats in these numbers. And I know for a fact that they call on faithful friends to help them. So I think we really need to look at the contract and see how, when their services are available, how many animals they're picking up and how often they ask our other animal shelters, SPCA and Faithful Friends to assist them in doing it. So I'm in agreement. I would really like to have not just the numbers, but what their hours are. That's another problem. I mean, I don't think they're available at night or after a certain hour. And a lot of animals that are a problem are roaming around at that time. So I think the whole contract should be reviewed. Thank you.
You're welcome. Councilmember Oliver.
Yeah, lastly, no, I was on that call when Councilman Gray had them come and do a presentation. I was just using them other animals as I guess as an example, because I know they do the cats and dogs, etc. So I just want to make that clear. I was on that call and I was just using them because I would like somebody to pick up them possums, raccoons, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief of Staff Washington.
Yes, I just wanted to say that we do have the data that you're seeking. We do have it. So, actually, the Deputy Chief of Staff, John Rago, keeps the data and I'll make sure that you get a hold of it. And the only footnote to this is that prior to us moving towards a state contract, which, we don't have any control on how they come up with the formula, but it has saved us a significant amount of money as compared to when we privatized, when we went out for a private contractor for this.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Council Member Walsh. Councilmember Walsh, is your hand up from the last time or do you have a new question?
No, I just wanted to make a comment over the Chief of Staff's comment. And that was, having been here when that contract was put together, she's absolutely right. We were paying an arm and a leg at that point. And really, we were going almost up to New York to try and find somebody who would take our animals. And then they put this whole program together and it really did save us money. So she's absolutely correct.
Thank you. Okay, you can proceed, Mr. Boykin.
Discuss 30,000 budget for overtime.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
my hand was up.
Oh, no. Okay, I didn't see your hand wasn't raised, but go ahead.
Sorry. Well, I just had one more comment about the dog thing or the animals. That's one of the number one complaints I get from the community, are complaints about roaming animals, especially dogs. And I'm not understanding how expensive an outside contract would be. I was hoping that maybe there'd be something in the middle. Maybe there's new companies out there offering the service, or I don't know. I didn't know about going to New York to get people to take our animals. You mean our SPCA and Faithful Friends don't take our animals? But maybe this is a conversation for, later, and I'll contact someone to discuss it. Thank you.
You're welcome. I don't see any more hands from council. Mr. Boykin?
Okay, thank you. The 30,000 budget for overtime, specifically checking the permits for after hours and weekends, is done or impacted. Next slide, please. Funding is for inspectors to be on call for after-hour emergency response. On-call occurs 7 days a week from Monday through Friday from 4:30 p.m. to 8:30 a.m. and weekends. There are no after-hours or weekend checking for permits. Next slide.
Hold on, Mr. Boykin. Councilmember Oliver?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just like to ask Mr. Boykin, Commissioner Boykin, could you please give us the number for the weekend for the emergency response? Because I've had several individuals who asked me, and I had the number at one point, but do you have that number available?
We don't give out the telephone number to the inspectors, but they can call the police 911 or the emergency number 302-654-5151. And they can advise the dispatch that they need the on-call inspector from license and inspection. And of course, they will take the necessary information for us to contact the person back if it's an emergency.
So may I follow up?
Proceed.
So I remember having this conversation before. I always thought that L&I should have a phone number for individuals to call L&I for the weekend, and someone should be able to on call, whoever's on call should be able to respond to that, because I never understood why someone is calling the police station to say, I'm leaving a message for L&I from the city of Wilmington, could you get it over? I recall it going through the situation regarding a whole nother situation last year, and no one ever responded to them. They didn't get a response to Monday morning. So that may be something we need to look into, because who's calling the police station? I know, like I said, I went through it one time. She never heard from anyone, and it was an emergency until Monday morning. So I think that's something we need to look into. That's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Discuss the 28,000 budgeted for standby pay, specific mechanism that triggers the standby pay, specifically if checking for permits for after hours and weekends is done or impacted. Next slide, please. Inspectors are on standby for after hours emergency calls. The standby pay is initiated by the weekly on-call schedule for the inspectors covering for the week. And that week consists of Friday at 4:30 p.m. to the next Friday at 8:30 a.m. There are no permits checks for after hours on weekends.
I have a question from Councilmember Spadola.
Thank you. Can you define what an emergency call is after hours for L&I, please?
Well, we get calls from the fire department and police department for various things that they see when they go out to complaints. If there's a fire, they do call us. We have to be there for the actions on the actual structure. The police, when they go into locations where they find deplorable conditions or there's issues within the property that they're in, they will call for an inspector. If they go to vacant properties where they have to escort people out of them, we respond in order for the properties to be resealed in order to prevent people from going back into them. those type of activities that we respond to after hours.
Okay, that was helpful. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember McCoy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Boykin, wanted to find out when it comes to standby pay, is this a as needed? Are they getting paid if there's no standby that weekend or whatever? Are they still getting paid?
They're still getting paid per contract, union contract. What it is they have to be on call, meaning they're scheduled to cover any emergency calls for that week is what the standby pay is covering.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Councilmember Oliver?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify something. The emergency that occurred on the north side was a contract that had a scaffold up in the alleyway of a young lady's house, and he was doing work and he left it there for the whole weekend, and she wasn't able to get out her back door, her back gate, if a fire would have broke out. So she had been calling L&I and no one responded. So that was an emergency I was talking about. I wasn't talking about a police or fire department. I just wanted to just make that clear. It was regarding someone doing some work and they illegally left their scaffold up like for 2 weekends straight, basically. Thank you.
You're welcome. Councilmember Walsh? Councilmember Walsh, is your hand up?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Madam Chair. What I'm wondering is, wouldn't those types of problems be eliminated with the 311 call now? Or no?
Yes, no, it does not. They stop at, I believe, 7:30 in the evenings.
Yes.
And they're not working on weekends.
Okay, but my point, if I may.
Yes.
My point is, wouldn't 311 be able to direct them to the fire department, or I guess that's the only place, or police department are the only two places they would go? Yeah or no? Wouldn't they be able to do that?
Yes, for the time that they're in office, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Discuss the plan 48,000 budgeted for membership and registration and the wearing and of safety apparel. Can you, next slide, please? The funding is for employee certifications that they have to maintain, also for continuing education requirements and training as per the union contract. It also covers the resources, books, and materials for the inspectors to perform their job tasks. And also it covers any safety equipment for the employees per union contract and also job conditions. Discuss the 26,000 budgeted for parking fees. Next slide, please. Prior to parking at 5th and Walnut Street, inspectors had to park and retrieve their vehicles from several locations because of parking availability. One was the Porter water filter plant on Route 202 and the city yard on Wilmington Avenue. It took the inspectors at a minimum 1 hour a day travel just to retrieve and park their vehicles, which resulted in lost productivity for work time. By parking at 5th and Walnut Street is provided additional time for the inspectors' workday for increased field operations. And I would share that when they originally did the study for this, it stated that with the parking at 5th and Walnut, it saved over 55 man hours for our inspectors to be working. Correction, 5,500 hours for our inspectors to be working in a year. Discuss the plan used for the 20,000 budgeted for consultants, specific vendors, amount of contract, expiration dates, length of contract, how long the city has been doing business with the vendor, scope of the services, specify any DBEs. Next slide, please. Prior to going into our consultant list, I just wanted to share with the committee that our property maintenance contractor, R&A contractors, is a minority contractor. That's $130,000 contract there. The first one here is Willis Pest Control. We've been partnered with them for 4 years. Their services for only vacant properties and is built on an as-used basis for wild animals, raccoons, possums, squirrels, birds, those kind of things that, we get complaints about. And Wills Pest Control is a minority contractor. The next contractor is R&F Roofing Company. We've been partnered with them for 3 years. And again, it's built on an as-used basis. The contractors call for roof evaluations, emergency repairs on vacant properties, and providing certified ladders to our inspectors if they need it in order to do their job. The next one is Ron Tree Service. We've been partnered with them for 2 years. And again, it's built on an as-used basis. The contractors call for hazardous trees not in the public right-of-way or on private property. The final vendor under this consultant fee is for our GPS tracking system for our vehicles. There's a Verizon contract through the city. It's $6,000 a year. It provides us access to their system in order to view the locations of our vehicles in the field. Next question is provide the amount of revenue collected by your department, specify the amount per revenue category for 2020, 21, and year to date, list amounts of fees and the last time fees were increased. Next slide, please. These are the major revenue sources. I would point out that the limitation of occupancy is a conglomerate of a number, about 20 different fees structures that we have within the department, and it falls under that line within the MUNIS system. And the rest, as you see, is for the other fees or revenue that is received by the department. As far as the major fee structures, vacant property fees, they have not been updated since 2003. That's the fee structure there in the middle. Instant tickets for commercial tickets was raised to $150 in July 2001. The limitation of occupancy, again, that covers the multitude of fees here within the department. They were addressed in 2008. And the building permits, it was changed from $12 per thousand for the cost of a permit. That was done in June 2014. The last slide is the what the
we have a
department looked
question.
like.
I'm sorry, we have a question, Mr. Boykin. Councilmember Gray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. These are the fees that you pay every year if you have a vacant property, correct?
Can we go
Correct.
back? To
Okay, go back to the
previous
next. Yes.
Thank you.
Well, while they're going back, does someone check to make sure the property is up to the standards of a vacant property
We do vacant property checks.
prior to allowing them to pay the fee, or we just take the money? I mean,
No, I'm sorry. What is required is that if a property is vacant, the property owner is required to do a vacant property registration for their property when it becomes vacant. From 0 to 1 year, there is no fee for that vacant property. After the next year, if it's still vacant, they're charged $500 and subsequent fees as the years of vacancy incurs for the property. And then I can point out if it's vacant for more than 10 years plus, is a $5,000 charge plus additional $500 per year that has been vacant past the 10-year mark. We do vacant property checks because what happens is that when we send out our billings once a year, folks who have changed the status of their properties, meaning they have either a renter, they sold it, or they have family members or someone else living in it, they want to take it off that vacant property list. So we have to do an inspection of the property to verify that someone is living in the property itself.
thank you. But on the reverse, do we just allow them to pay that yearly fee and not determine that the property is being kept under the standards of L&I? Because a lot of vacant properties, the windows aren't boarded up, the roof's falling in. So I'm wondering, do we do an inspection before we allow them to pay?
Yes, again, we require our inspectors to do a 90-day inspection of vacant properties, and they should also be addressing any violation, such as, like you said, broken windows, boarded windows, and those kind of things, in order to try to get some movement from the property owners to get it off the vacant property list.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we have two more council members that have questions. Councilmember Cabrera and then Councilmember Fields. We're running over our time and we have about 3 or 4 more questions. I just wanted everyone to be mindful of the time. And we also have to get our public comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Boykin, Commissioner Boykin, does this budget reflect the increases that we're looking to make in the vacant property fees, or is it based on the current fees?
I apologize. I'm unaware of that, whatever the discussion with the increase in the vacant property fees.
Okay, no worries, no worries. So then that probably has the current fees, but that is something that we are looking to increase just to incentivize the owners to either get rid of them quicker or repurpose them quicker. And with the current fines, they're not moving quick enough. And it does take up to 10 years before you can actually do something with a vacant property. So we do have legislation coming up for that. It's not reflected in this budget, but I think that the council members will probably see an increase in those fees, or at least a decrease in the amount of vacant properties when that does happen. Thank you for answering my question.
Councilmember Fields.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Boykin, could you just tell me why the vacant property list is no longer on the LNI website? Now, you do have the registration form as it is in the brochure, but the actual list is gone.
Yes, we had to take it down because it was outdated, and because of the most recent vacant property went out. So we're updating it in order to ensure that the data is accurate, is why we took it down.
May I follow up, Madam Chair?
Yes.
So when do you propose that list is going to be back up?
Well, we're reviewing it as we've been reviewing it as we're going along. So hopefully shortly we'll be able to get it back up with accurate information.
Okay, well, when you're about to roll it out, do you think you could just send the email to council letting them know that it's up and it's available?
Yes, I can.
Thank you very much. That's it, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see any more hands from council members. You can proceed, Mr. Boykin.
This is the organization chart with the reorganization with the Department of Land Use. This is what it would look like as far as the L&I side.
Okay. All right, council members, before I go to the public, does anyone have any questions regarding the organizational chart? Okay, if none, I'm going to go to the public to see if we have any hands there. And I don't see any hands from our public. Okay, all right, so going once, going twice. If no other questions for L&I, for Mr. Boykin, Mr. Greco, Mr. Hayford, I guess we can adjourn this meeting. So can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, I want to thank everyone for participating on today. The administration, council members, our council staff, WITN, and everybody that participated. So at this time, we consider this meeting adjourned. Thank you and have a good evening, everyone.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Dogs. And if Ellen